OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Friday morning, Adrian here and Shane over there. Good morning to you, Shane.
Good morning. How are things?
All good. What's happening?
Sure, fine.
Yeah. What's the plan for the weekend?
Weekend festival plans.
Oh yeah. I heard you banging on about this during the week. Yeah, trying to get yourself an upgrade. Did anything happen out of that or no?
You know what? I don't even want an upgrade.
You're not enough of a celebrity, like.
No, I'm definitely not. I'm not an Adrian Barry type here. You know.
Get out of it.
Crappy quiz favourite. 3 nights in a tent is going to be interesting.
Right.
It's given a little bit of rain, I think, late tonight into early tomorrow morning.
Without getting into too much personal information, which I know you've also done a little bit of this week.
Well, unintentionally, thanks,
shape, you're fairly standard.
It's standard two-man tent.
Two-man tent.
Yeah, but going for the full double airbed.
Oh yeah,
just for the full comfort.
What's the forecast for the weekend weather?
I think 9 p.m. tonight till 6 a.m. tomorrow morning is going to be iffy. Oof. But at least we'll have the tents up and all today.
If it rains at all, particularly in that type of a tent,
I know.
You're kidding yourself if you don't think that's coming in at some stage or another.
The double airbed hopefully will keep me slightly above the wetness underneath, but we should be grand.
I was at Pulp on Friday night.
Oh yeah.
Oh, savage gig.
Throwback.
Brilliant gig.
Bit of nostalgia.
Yeah, I might have them. Obviously Oasis v Blur was the big debate at that time.
You're about to say something outrageous, I feel.
Yeah, and I kind of believe that to be. They were very much. I think that.
Here we go. Take a cup of tea, everyone.
I feel it's such an outrageous thing to say that I feel a bit of trepidation about saying.
Get the clip ready.
I don't know that I would have had Oasis ahead of Blur.
Right. Okay.
And I might have had Oasis and Pulp on roughly the same pedestal.
Wow.
Pulp are just savage and
get off that fence. Choose one of them there.
Even now, Jarvis Cocker is an amazing. Like when he comes out at the start and you see the silhouette, you're like, oh my god, dude, this guy still looks like he did when he was 25.
Yeah, that helps.
When the close-up comes in, you're okay. Right, there's a few grey hairs and you're okay.
If you had to choose one, Oasis or Pulp, who you?
I know you're pushing me on that one.
I'll
probably go with Pulp.
Right.
Let's throw that out there.
Jesus.
Very good though. Very good. Played most different class. Different class.
Yeah.
And they really were. They were just an exceptionally good live band.
How long did they play for?
About an hour and a half. Maybe
it's Malahide Castle, no?
Yeah, St Anne's Park.
St Anne's Park. Yeah.
And it's just a brilliant, lovely summer evening buzz to it.
In Leicester, yeah.
Brilliant evening out, I must say.
That's grand.
Says, middle-aged man. Everybody around me, also in their middle age. It was.
You were all dancing the same way, were you? The dad dance.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, a lot of this one.
I'm curious about that, like, because I'm obviously not a father yet, but like, do you get like an email with instructions as to how to do all that sort of thing? Do you know, like
the dad dance?
Dad dance
just seems to come naturally. To be honest, there's no pack or anything like that. You just
happens.
It just happens. Like, I mean, are you? What did you just say?
No, I was just thinking about it. I wasn't
sure. Did you just use the F word then?
No, I didn't use.
Sorry, I thought you muttered the F word under your breath.
No.
Are you? Sorry, you're obviously offering yourself forward here as, I'm such a good dancer now. That
well, no, I'm. That's my point. I'm terrible, but
that's that. Just carry on through life.
Yeah,
see, I don't feel as if I'm any worse or better dancer now than I was when I was a young buck.
So you haven't changed.
I was never any good.
Okay.
And
John was at Depeche Mode the other night as well, so there was a bit of nostalgia in the office this week.
Brilliant
music.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah. Anyway, enough of that. Although if people want to contribute, let's call it a Pulp versus Oasis. I know where that conversation's going already. I know I'm an outlier. I get that. There's no need to hammer me about it.
Interesting,
but that's my opinion. A lot of the back pages today, needless to say. We've a stag show coming up, by the way. Will we just do that first and let people know what's happening, and then we can get into the papers? We've Ronan O'Gara standing by in about 6 minutes' time, and he's going to jump on to talk to us about probably the biggest game in his career, and they always say it's the biggest because it's the next, but it's Toulouse in the top 14 final tomorrow night in Paris, and it'll be an absolute humdinger, and we'll get Ronan's thoughts on that live in the show in just a few minutes' time. Nathan Murphy is going to join us live on the line from Greece. We'll see exactly what sort of the lie of the land there is ahead of the game tonight, and expectations, team lineup, all that kind of thing from 8. Pat Spillane will be with us after that, the Sligo footballer Pat Spillane. We haven't had him, I don't think, on the show before, so good opportunity on the eve of their game against the Dubs in the final game of the group stages of the All-Ireland Championship. We'll get his thoughts on that. We'll do a little bit more on the sports pages for you at 20 to 9. Maurice Brosnan, the senior sports writer with the Examiner, will be with us at 10 to 9 this morning, and that'll be a preview of that final round of games in the All-Ireland football group stages. And then Will O'Callaghan will be on, and he's going to update his hurling power rankings for 2023, and Melissa Farrell then at 9:30 from the show last night. I don't know. Update. I tried to tap him for some information last night to give me a bit of a steer as to what was going to happen.
Will?
Yeah, very keeping his cards very, very close.
These lads think too much about it, don't they? They just need to just point and just pick the team, drive people insane.
Well, the reputation is on the line.
To be fair, they have to put some thought behind it. But no, Tommy's done all right. Galway at number 1, I don't think anyone can argue with. So, as long as your first page is correct, like he was getting a bit of slack maybe from Wexford fans this week, rightfully so, and then Laois fans as well maybe find themselves still behind Fermanagh after beating them last weekend. So it's maybe not as reactive as some County fans would hope. But we'll see how Will fares this week.
Well, I do buy the logic of it being hard to shift the power rankings. It can't be reactive.
Why can't it?
Because it's got to be an in the round sense of, you can't just go Sligo beat Dublin this weekend, we got to get Sligo into the top 3.
No, but if teams are of a similar enough level, like Sligo are obviously a level below Dublin for sure, so I think a few things need to come into it. Like if Westmeath beat a team in Division 3 and they still sat behind them, I think you'd be kicking up a fuss. But
look, I'd be kicking up a fuss no matter what's going
usual,
on. Yeah. Michael says Pulp were great live and had a few songs that were classics. Blur has some amazing songs, especially the early stuff. I go with that. While Oasis were solid for years, all great bands, but the Verve were on another level. IMO.
Jeez, right.
Well, that's I mean, I think there's certainly something in that. They burned brightly and for a short period of time, the Verve.
Yeah.
But there we go. And Frank says, Shane, it's passed down. It's a passed down handbook. It's called the Dad Book.
Dad Book, right? Yeah, I know. My dad never gave that to me. Maybe it's when you have kids yourself that day you're just handed it.
Yeah.
Or it just arrives.
You get no manual. They give you a manual when you get a dishwasher. You get no manual when you get a kid.
I know I'll be listening back no matter what age.
Apart from Dadcast, of course.
Exactly. That's what I was just about to say. Yeah. I'll be listening back to episodes of the Dadcast.
Well, I think at some point we're going to kill the Dadcast, because I think we all have a concern that at some point, and for some of the lads whose kids are older than mine, that'll be coming down the track very shortly, that kids will be able to listen back to it, and I don't think we really want that.
Talking about their dad's intimate details?
No, well, I mean, potentially a bit of that, but talking about them.
Yeah, fair enough. To be the second-hand embarrassment. No, I can understand that. If my dad was talking about me on radio or podcast, I'd
certainly
have a word.
Well, I think I wouldn't mind them listening to it when they get a little bit older.
Yeah, it's the in-between age.
I just think who wants to be listening to that? Like, Budge asks an excellent question here on YouTube this morning.
Right.
Who has the better haircut, Adrian or Shane?
Jesus.
We're both fresh from the old barber, are we?
Budge has given his opinion. Has to be Adrian, guys. I won't argue that. No, fresh from the barber. Yeah, I feel like heading off the weekend, you have to
give me a 0 back and sides there.
0.5 in the back and sides.
0.5. I didn't even know 0.5 was the thing.
There you go. Half fade. Yeah.
Half a fade.
Half fade.
It's a fresh fade, Shane. Looks good.
Learn something new every day.
Teenage Kicks. The game tonight dominates most of the back pages. I'm not breaking any breaking news there. Teenage Kicks so hard to beat for Kenny. Right, Philip Lanigan.
See what they've done there. Yeah.
Another great band.
Tell you what, we're on a theme this morning.
Philip Quinn riding inside. Philip Quinn's angle, and it can tend to be the case from Athens here. Stephen Kenny's under a little bit of pressure. He does say inside, if I can get the thing here, he talks about how impressive the Greece press conference was. The manager, of course, Gus Poyet, and George Baldock, the defender. And then he says after that, it was never going to be easy for Stephen Kenny to follow such a couple of slick performances, but even so, the Irish manager's briefing was bland and lacked fighting talk. So he's already getting in ahead of the narrative tonight. Regardless
just as well,
of what happens, the presser was bland.
Just as well you don't get any points in the group for press conferences, because we don't care. Stephen can be as bland as he wants as long as the team performs tonight.
So that's in the Irish Daily Mail for you this morning. And Champ City have company for the big kickoff. A big story in the back page. The fixtures, I don't care about
irrelevant story every year, isn't it?
It's such an
I look curiously at the first and last games, then I'm like, alright, that's
it,
enough.
It's a buy story, and again, a bit obviously close to the time it gets a bit juicier.
Yeah.
I think for now, lads, chill out. Actually, somebody has a point for us here about the pronunciation of Gus Poyet.
Saw that, Forlan. Lads, ahead of the match tonight, will you get in touch with Owen to confirm the correct pronunciation of Gus Poyet? It's Pochette. Y is SH in Uruguayan. It's not French, so pronounce the T at the end. So that would be Pochette. I don't know. We're not going to start calling him Gustavo Pochette. Fountainstown 4-9.
We're not going to start calling him Gustavo.
I appreciate if you're accurate, but
do you go for Gustavo Poyet?
I used to love calling him Gustavo when I was a kid.
Did you?
Gustavo Fring, like Breaking Bad.
Oh yeah.
Do you know? Lean into it.
The Irish Daily Star this morning. It's Lala Eland, Ricky Fowler marching on together with pals Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth towards a stake in Leeds United. I'm reading this as if I haven't read it before and it's news to me, because I haven't read it before and it's news to me. So that is. It's the thing to do now if you're an American. This is really going to pot, isn't it?
I remember my first time holding the paper as well.
Hey, if you've got a name and you're an American, it's the thing to do is to buy into an English football club. But Ricky Fowler and Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth taking a stake in Leeds would be an interesting thing.
I'll tell you what, Ricky Fowler,
probably be a tiny stake, but it'd be just worth it for the storylines that come along with it.
Yeah, wouldn't it be just great to see, aside from an Irish winner? I sat down and watched most of the opening round yesterday.
Yeah.
And like Ricky Fowler.
Nice segue.
Outrageous 62. And then of course Xander Schauffele goes and does the same thing. Leveling the best score ever in a US Open opening round.
Incredible.
It's just amazing. So
he had it for like 5 minutes and then your man followed him in.
Just mad. I think Schauffele tweeted afterwards, will we do it all again tomorrow?
Yeah, but their curmudgeon of me is saying that the course seemed to be set up in a way that was that it was possible to get those scores.
Possibly, yeah. But then the next closest were a couple of shots off. Do you know,
not far.
Yeah.
Like if Rory's back there on 500 par and. We were both saying that watching him in the first tee, I watched about half his round yesterday before I had to go to bed, but we were both saying before the show that in the first tee he stripes that down the middle. He's the longest drive of the day, like it never left the absolute dead centre of the fairway and was an absolute bomb. And you just think that's it, he's dialed in today.
He was,
and he was 2 under after 2 and was steady as she goes, ends up in 500 par, and like with Rory you just,
but he's usually a slow starter, so like that's his best. I think it's his best opening round.
Well, he'd be due a blow up today and then chasing hard into the weekend and nearly get there, but if you could avoid that and steady as she goes again today, I know the lead score at the minute is 8 under par, but you do often see that and the winning score can end up at 8, 7, 9, not far off.
If he can stripe it down the middle in the first again today, Adrian, I think we'll all get excited. It's just a swagger, he's playing with confidence.
You had a lot of battles for the hearts and minds of golf fans around the world, good versus evil. You had him versus Brooks Koepka on their match. Brooks Koepka, I don't find him the most dislikable.
He's actually probably one of the more likeable players.
He played a lot of his golf on the European Tour early on, so there's probably a little bit of that. And obviously he was one of those that defected into live alongside old Lefty, who I used to love as a player, strolling around the fairways, strutting his stuff,
hitting bombs,
hitting his little cheeky little fist bumps with the fans. I just can't warm to him anymore.
There's the clip of, and it should be so cute and heartwarming, where he goes to the kid and he asks the kid, what club should I use? And the kid in the side was like, well, if I could hit like you, I'd probably use whatever club. And then Phil hits the shot
kid from Leitrim.
I don't know what that was. JP Wright, voice actor, is going to be in touch now in a second. And then he hits the shot and he turns around to the kid, Riley, you can be my caddy any day. Walks off. It's like, oh, Phil. If it was anybody else, it'd be heartwarming, but it was just
the whole live stuff hadn't happened. That was
cringe. Do me a favour.
But anyway, he's playing alongside Harrington, and Harrington was actually tipping along quite nicely himself. Has ended up now in 3 over par, but was a couple under early doors and looking pretty good and pretty steady, but sort of wheels came off a little bit for him. So, and the Irish guys generally, Shane Lowry is very much back to field as well. So
iffy.
McIlroy is the man to keep an eye on, and we'll do that over the next few days. Acropolis now, by the way, is probably the tab of the morning for you on the Irish Daily Star this morning in relation to the game tonight, been in Athens. So
see what they've done there. Sure.
Loads more in the back pages, and we'll get to those for you in a little bit. Over the course of the morning, loads of comments coming in as well, by the way, whether it's Oasis or Pulp or Blur, and we will keep that debate going for you. Is it a debate? I'm not sure. Over the course of the morning today, OTB AM with Gillette Labs, get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition is available now, and I did promise we were going to chat to Ronan O'Gara ahead of a very big weekend. Ronan, good morning to you.
Hi Adrian, how are you? Shane,
how are you doing?
Good, yeah, good. Just few difficulties getting the camera angle right, but seems
you're
okay.
Looking good. You're just about in shot there, so we'll roll with
that.
Room
in Paris, so we came up last night by train, and long day today, captain's run, and play tomorrow at 9 o'clock local time. So it's interesting, very interesting times.
Is it interminable with such a late start, like the day?
Yeah, it's interesting, because during the year you're trying to you have to feature that into your routine, because well, the lads from the Dadcast would know well, usually I'd be in bed from at 10 o'clock, but like that's just the start of the second half. Yeah. In terms of, and if your day starts at 8 and your kickoff is 13 hours later, it's different. At the start it took a bit of getting used to, but into the players' programs you build in a kind of nap times and kind of not allowed to drink coffee times, so a little bit of guidance, but we're pretty experienced now because a lot of the big games in Canal Plus are 9 o'clock on either Saturday or Sunday night, so but there is a lot, I suppose, from a management point of view of the difference between peaking for a 9 o'clock kickoff or a 3 o'clock kickoff, and it isn't as simple as one would think.
How do you go about sort of managing your own day tomorrow? Like, you're obsessing about the game, I'm certain about that, and it's a very long day to try and fill your time. Is there a template of how you go about that, or?
Yeah, I suppose the good thing about this now, this will be unique in the fact that there's no game to prepare for after, or there's nothing on Monday really, so you're all in, so you can actually enjoy today and tomorrow, because knowing that you've worked hard and this is the reward you get for it. But after 27 games it comes down to 180 minutes to decide whether you get silverware or not, which is the same for Toulouse, but that's what makes sports so enjoyable and ruthless, is the fact that one team goes away happy, the other will be gutted. But filling the day would be, the staff might go for a waddle tomorrow morning, and then there's literally just hang around. If there's boys looking for chats or stretching or coffee, just what's good at the minute is that I think it's a group where when you meet people you want to speak to them, as opposed to will I go down to the team room now, and that was probably the case a few years ago. But now the boys enjoy each other's company. The time obviously leading into a final, the day of the game is long, but from our point of view, it's exactly where we wanted to be, so we're hugely excited.
Presume any coffee bans don't impact yourself or the coaching staff. That'll be just disastrous, especially on the day of a final. You need your coffee on board.
Yeah. No, obviously the rules are. I'm not too bothered about the guys overloading and the staff, but from a player's point of view, especially like coming from last weekend, just in San Sebastian, it was whatever 35 degrees at pitch level, I think, and you could see we were excellent for 40 minutes, and then it was like you were talking to people but they weren't really there at half time. You could see, Jesus, this heat is having a huge effect on people, and I think after the rest we couldn't really impose our game for the first 15 minutes of the second half, so always learning and always trying to, I suppose, take on board what the conditions are giving you. But most definitely we've seen, was it in USA 94 with Steve Staunton and the boys, that the heat has a big impact on the paddies, so Donnacha Ryan needs lots of sun cream, that's for certain. But,
I see him in the John Aldridge role with the
get some factor 50 on the skin. It's probably an easy enough deduction to make, Ronan, given the 21-3 half-time lead last week against Bordeaux in the semi, but was that an ambition to start fast given what happened in the Champions Cup final?
We didn't really start fast, to be fair. We started okay, but they scored first, 3-0, and then we took control of the game, and it sounds a lot of points, but it was probably 3 half opportunities that turned into points, and I think that's what happens when you've good players and confident on form, that they can turn. You go back through the Premiership and watching all the strikers over the years, that's what makes them so interesting when they got half chances. Shearer or Rooney or Fowler, any of these guys, they used to just notch up goals. I think that's what teams do when they're in form and when they're getting half opportunities. And you know what I mean, 3 opportunities over 40 minutes isn't very many, but we defended brilliantly when we were under pressure once, but we managed the game. But then the 20 minutes after half time were disappointing, and they came back into it. But we finished strongly, and obviously for a big game, the lead really didn't change hands, so we were in full control of the game.
You've chatted to us a fair bit in this lot over the years about the importance of the European Cup and how you had to bring the club and the team on the journey to understand that, and obviously that's paid off in absolute spades. Mr. European Cup, I think, was how Keith Wood might have described you on the show during the week. The bouclier needs no explanation, I'm sure, to the owners, to the players, to the city. Is there a different vibe about it, and can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of that then in terms of the difference between 8 and the European Cup locally?
Yeah, well, there wouldn't be any history in La Rochelle in terms of the Champions Cup. You know, it's when you look at the statistics or the history of it, everything is in its infancy. Really, it's just, I suppose, most particularly in the last 2 seasons, our streak has been red hot. But prior to that, we didn't play many games, or the club didn't play many games, so it was relatively new, and it made it very exciting. But I mean, La Rochelle doesn't have much history in the top 14. It's never won a bouclier, so that's the natural next step. So are we to be intimidated by that, or are we to be excited by that? So I think this group is very excited, and I think the way I see it, it's the natural step for the team to take. But you know, it all comes on the line. One performance will either give you that or take it away and make it more difficult and more frustrating for supporters and for fans and for the club. But you got to be excited by this challenge. You got to be aware of what it would mean to the town, and we are aware of that. And I think there's great connection between supporters and the team. So it doesn't feel different. It feels like another big game. But we've been on a treadmill for whatever, I think the last number of months, where every game has nearly felt like a big game, and it's important that we understand what's at stake, but you don't I suppose it can't be any bigger than Dublin. It's of the same importance, probably more important to French people, to all of us probably, because it would be a first. Winning in Dublin wasn't the first because we've already won the Champions Cup, but the team would be very excited to try and win a bouclier. There's huge history involved, there's huge prestige involved, and that excites us.
What sort of a step up would it be in terms of the reaction to it? Like, because I think that's the thing that's interesting to an Irish audience, that sense of the European Cup being an established thing here, less so in La Rochelle. We saw the scenes 3 weeks ago after you won the Heineken Cup and the reaction to it, and 12 months ago. This is a step up again locally in terms of their understanding of their relationship with the top 14. Yeah,
because it's so steeped in history, Adrian. It means it's been there. That's the one thing that's been, I suppose, stable in rugby over the last 100 years has been the quest to win a Brennus. So it becomes, I suppose, a lot more tangible or live with the group of players we have, and I suppose with the way we've been playing. So the locals want it, we want it, but just because you want it doesn't mean you get it, and I cannot stress that enough, you know. So there'll be a plan tomorrow night at 9 o'clock to be efficient in what we do, but that doesn't guarantee anything. But you shouldn't, I suppose, be fearful of that. You should be enthralled by that. You should be excited about showing your talent in front of the whole of France in the biggest biggest rugby sporting occasion in France this year. And it's something that we've chatted about, but it's a very natural, I think, progression for this team, is that we believe that we show them we're the best team in Europe. Now we need to show we're the best team in France.
There's the added element tomorrow night, Ronan, if yourselves overcome Toulouse, given this new Champions Cup format that's been announced during the week. Leinster will join La Rochelle, Munster and Saracens as top seeds for the new look Champions Cup. So you'll have the Munster fans, as you usually do, supporting you, but you'll also have the Leinster fans behind you tomorrow night. Does that warm your heart?
It does.
Well, it is very important that the only time you want to meet Leinster is in a final, or when there's something worthwhile at stake. That if having them in your group would be not a good idea, obviously, because they're such a quality team. So I never thought about that. Obviously, there's enough at stake between La Rochelle and Toulouse to be worrying about third parties, but I appreciate the warm gesture, Shane.
Yeah, I'm sure that's again how it was intended. Come here, did you just see the Examiner this morning, Ron? You talk about if you don't manage to get over the line, that it leaves a few chinks for the begrudgers. Who are the begrudgers?
Yeah, I saw that. I'm not in control of the headline, obviously. I think in the content, is there mention of begrudgers?
It's not actually. The headline is when the players are doing well, you don't want the season to end. But this was just a paragraph within it where you say that it was the one you want. It's massive validation of the road travel so far.
But I suppose where we are, there isn't any doubt of the quality of the team, but there would always be a bit of unfinished business from my point of view, is the fact that you don't get over the line tomorrow night, because they're the same teams in Europe that there are in France. Obviously it doesn't never equate when an opposition like Leinster beat Toulouse and we beat Leinster. That means La Rochelle beat Toulouse. It doesn't work like that. We know it doesn't work like that, but the competitor in me goes, we need to confirm the pecking order in that regard.
I'm interested, Ronan, was there a big focus that game in January against Toulouse? Like when you think back to it, I think it was an 8-game losing streak that La Rochelle had over against Toulouse, but it was a comprehensive win.
I think a 9-game if you include a friendly, perhaps. Right. Yeah.
But if you look at the stats from that match in January, like La Rochelle only had to make 12 tackles, 68% possession, controlled the set piece, 30 points to 7. So there was obviously a huge focus put on that game.
There's a focus and accountability on the last 5 games, because I was the boss. So when you come in and you're the leader of an organisation, you control what you can control with your staff. So I can't look further than before that, because it's something that I put a big emphasis on preparation. So it's my responsibility to prepare the team with the staff from Monday to Friday, and then the players play Saturday, so they express themselves. So we went through it the last 5 games. Last season we lost 3 times to them. In the first game, Will Skelton had a red card. In the 4th game, we got a red card, red awardee after 13 minutes, and we lost the game by 6 points. But I think what was great after that game was, I think the boys understood that if we keep at 15, we can win this, or we can win this mental battle. And I think the mentality changed ever since that. But you need confirmation of that. And then we played them at home. Obviously, they had a mixed team, a weak team, no doubt about it. But it didn't matter. It was just a case of us showing we're capable of getting across the line, and we don't have a mental barrier against this team. So we won that game pretty convincingly. But most definitely since, I think, the start of this season, we would have a very different outlook on Toulouse than what would have been associated with a La Rochelle-Toulouse game in the last 20 years, shall we say.
There was a lot of talk about Anton Dupont after the Leinster Heineken Cup game, and how they had an injury early on and they possibly misused him after that, and he was almost played out of the game. Have you any, it seems like such a daft question in so many ways, because I don't know how many coaches have been asked this before playing either Toulouse or France when he's been at 9, but is there any special plays for him, or how do you manage him?
No, you just got to be on red alert, but hopefully his influence isn't as big when he hasn't the ball. So we need to try and control possession. The guy is so good, and I think we've all seen that. And we discussed that there's times when there's 19 out of 20 scrum halves, whatever, across the teams in Europe, where you feel you have an organisation that can look after their attack. But with this guy, he breaks all the rules, and that's what great players do. And he has time, he has speed, he has power, he has a really fast brain. So he's a huge threat, but we can't triple mark him. We'll try and double mark him, but that means there's space for someone else as well. So it's a dangerous recipe to do that. You just got to respect him and got to understand that when he has a purple patch or a moment, just try and get back in the game as quickly as possible.
We had David Sharkey on the show last week. He was talking a little bit about your relationship around the teaming over the last few years and the other work that he's done. It was a very interesting chat. You spoke after the Champions Cup final about the theming and the personal nature of the photographs. The photographs, the Everest piece. Is it the same again this weekend in relation to that, or is there some new twist on it?
No. You can't do that. We've scaled Everest twice. We need a different. We need a different story. There will be a different story, but to be shared next week.
He talked about the moon landings as well, so maybe you can go beyond Everest, Ronan. There's always higher.
You're hot, very hot, Shane.
Right, I'm on the right path.
What does you mentioned early on about Monday? What does work look like on Monday for you? Is it the eternity?
There's no such thing as work, as you know. I coach rugby, so
what does getting out of bed on Monday morning look like for you, regardless of the outcome? Is there I use the word in the loosest possible sense then, is there work to be done, or is the key get turned?
No, it's all in Saturday night, so it's Sunday and Monday, Tuesday looks after itself. You know, you're the brutal reality. There's two different scenarios and they're poles apart, so you got to be prepared for both of them, and that's what happens when you're, I suppose, lucky to be involved in finals. So we're aware of both, I suppose, paths, but I think we're pretty excited by the one we want to take.
You're finding it hard to even think about Monday, I'd say, at this stage.
I never think about Monday anyway before a game. It doesn't really matter.
Something else you might not have thought about, and you might not have much thoughts to give us about, but the Johnny Sexton letter of misconduct obviously has cropped up over the last week or so. I'm sure it's not occupying too much of your headspace, but any thoughts about, like, there's a lot of discussion obviously about the ban that might follow from the actions in and around the final at the Aviva. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Johnny's he's a competitor, a great guy. There shouldn't be a ban for Johnny. There shouldn't be. I'd be strong in that. I think I think I didn't hear anything or see any videos, but I know the character very well. An insane competitor. Maybe his temper flared over for a minute or two, or a second or two, sorry, but the guy is a role model to in Irish rugby, in what he has done. I think people need to move on with this, and it's something that I think that's been completely stirred up depending on different people's agendas.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out over the next little while. You have the whole country behind you this time, headed tomorrow night, and we'll be tuned in and hoping for the best for you. Really enjoyed the last 20 minutes, and
you won't even watch it, will you?
I'll be 100%. I'm not going to lie. I don't watch an awful lot of top 14. I'll be 100% tuned in.
I'm looking for a La Rochelle jersey. I was looking for one before.
I have a flag at home. Shane. I'll share it with you.
Well,
good man.
Good luck with it.
Is there GA this weekend?
Oh, there's big GA, yeah. The final round of the group games, yeah.
So who's playing who?
We have, you're looking to see who Cork are playing. I have Dublin Sligo and Roscommon Kildare all in the same group. You have Kerry Louth. Cork Mayo is probably the juiciest game of the weekend.
So hurling was last weekend. There's no hurling this weekend.
There's a little bit of hurling this weekend as well, yeah.
Got Offaly, Tip and Carlow Dublin, I think, are the only hurling matches really. So
are you watching much of it?
The games last weekend were unbelievable, weren't they? The Limerick-Clare game and Cats and Galway.
Yeah.
Jeez,
it's not over till it's over. There's another lesson. There's theming in that Kilkenny result, I think.
And the Limerick game was where?
That was in the Gaelic grounds, actually, in Limerick. Yeah, home advantage. But Clare were quite happy, I think. Yeah.
Go again.
50,000 people.
Yeah, it was full anyway. Yeah.
It was unbelievable, wasn't it? What
the finish.
Advertisement for.
Have you been to a Munster final, Ronan?
Have I been to a Munster final? I'm sure I have, but it's a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
That Limerick team are impressive. I'm sure there's bits and pieces that you're watching of them.
They sure are. They're incredibly. They're serious operators.
Yeah. Right. Well, look, you won't be watching too much of it tomorrow. Good man.
Cheers.
Good luck.
Cheers, Ronan.
Bye-bye. Ronan O'Gara, always interesting. On the line there from La Rochelle. And I will. You won't be watching it because you'll have other things to do. I'm 100% going to be watching that game.
So you said 9:45. So is it what?
It's 8 o'clock.
Our time.
Our time. Yeah.
It's interesting. It sounds like he's using Apollo 11 on the moon landings to his effect. He certainly didn't deny that. But then it's an obvious step. You know, you've used Everest, as he says. So where do you go beyond that? Like,
where do you go for there? Right, Nathan is standing by. We're going to go for the cash machine first.
Off the balls, summer cash machine.
Eric Granell was repairing a shredder in a forest in Blanchardstown, as you do on a Thursday, when he answered the cash machine call. Luckily for Eric, he had the number saved in a safe place, and he's bringing the family away on holiday as a result. You could be doing likewise. Eric is our 7th winner so far in June, and on Friday, that's today, we're going to have our 8th winner, as we'll have a guaranteed winner of €50,000. Taking part is easy. Every day we give you an amount, take note of it, enter, and if we call you at 3 o'clock, you could just tell us the amount and you'll win the cash. Don't forget, it's a guaranteed winner today. Someone will be starting the weekend by winning a life-changing amount of cash. The summer cash machine has been reloaded and it's €50,353.87. So to enter, text OTB and only OTB to 57557. That's 57557. If it's you, we'll call you back after 3 o'clock on Friday, June 16th. You answer your phone within 5 rings and tell us the prize amount and you will win the money. Text OTB to 57557. That's OTB to 57557. Cost is €2.50 plus your standard message rate to apply. You have to be over 18. You're playing across the call-out network of stations. Full terms on our website at offtheball.com. Get your entry in by 3 o'clock on Friday, June 16th. Cash machine will then randomly pick one entry. It could be you that we're calling. Answer within 5 rings. Tell us the prize amount. The cash is all yours. €50,353.87. Make a note and text in to OTB to 57557. That's €50,353.87. And we're back after these with Nathan in Greece.
Off the balls, summer cash machine.
have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
He is desperate to beat Shearer's record. There's no doubt about that. And I do think, given the reality that players tend to move around more now than they did then, if he does beat Shearer's record, that record may last forever.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
All right, 8 minutes past 8. Nathan Murphy live from Athens. Good morning to you.
How are you?
Oh, he's croaky. The red wine was had.
Actually, I was a bit croaky there now. I've just been downstairs having a bit of a row with the receptionist, as I had the most beautiful Athenian shot lined up, the rooftop bar, the Acropolis in the background, and he won't open the door for me.
Oh no!
And did you not? I mean,
we had arranged this last night. We had arranged this last night, and I gave it the big one, and he said no.
Do you know when you go on an away trip, Shane, and you know things, you've been out for a few drinks the night before, you know things are getting away from you a little bit, and then you come up with this cock and bull story while you're sat behind it, like.
I wish my life was that exciting.
Could you not have said? Do you know who I am?
I sat in bed watching the golf. I sat in bed watching the golf. It was as exciting as it got last night.
With Greek commentary?
No. Somehow, remarkably, the Sky Go works in Greece.
All right. I mean, maybe we shouldn't be talking about this.
It works just fine. I don't know how this was no illegal stream or anything. It's most enjoyable.
And Rory is going to continue to shoot the lights out without any question whatsoever, and there'll be no bumps in the road, and he'll get business done.
Well, there was a bump in the road on 18, but listen, he held the putt, so he limited the damage. It's a tasty looking leaderboard already, isn't it?
Oh, it looks class. What is there? We were sort of half joking about earlier on that he would, if regular form is to be followed through, today will be a bumpy ride, and it may even be an over par score, and then he'll chase hard into the weekend and come up just short. Is that how you expect this to play out, or are you seeing something different from him?
No, I think he's been playing some consistent golf over the last couple of weeks. The big concern was his wedge play that just seemed to be way off. But you look at how he's driving, like that drive on the first hole last night, the longest drive of the day, and it was just his walk afterwards. There seemed to be something there of yes, it's going to happen for me this week. I don't think anyone knows how they're going to react. You touched on that Schauffele and Fowler, set a new US Open record. This is meant to be the toughest test of the year at the US Open. So how do they react? Like, it's a very fun golf course. It's a brilliant golf course to watch. But was it too easy for them yesterday? So do they react, and do they overreact and make it too difficult and turn it into a bit of a lottery? Peter Lowry was on Golf Weekly saying he wouldn't be surprised if he saw low score, high score, low score, high score, that would be the sort of rhythm of it. So I think the score doesn't really matter for McIlroy. It's playing to whatever the level of the course is and sticking within 3-4 shots heading into the weekend, and as you say, not just bombing out and having a disaster of a day. But you can look at some of the scores yesterday. It is that type of golf course, but I think he's probably going to be there for the long haul.
Yeah, and unlike yourself, who has just taken a call and disappeared off our screens. But
well, I'm back. If you could tell News Talk to stop calling me, that'd be great.
Let her roar there, Kathleen. Let her roar.
Ricky Fowler, Nathan. That's the obviously, if we don't get an Irish winner, it would be a nice one. 173rd in the year, in the rankings just a year ago, and hasn't qualified for the last two US Opens, but absolutely tore it up yesterday.
Yeah, he's back this year. He's been playing very well this year and has shown a bit of form. I don't think anyone saw this coming yesterday, probably least of all Ricky Fowler. But yeah, Fowler is still one of those golfers, despite his drop in his rankings. I think he's probably still one of the 10 most famous golfers in the world. He's somebody who people instantly recognise, and it's a long time since he contended. He had that run of finishing second in all the majors. So Fowler, Schauffele is a US Open expert, but I think Scheffler is the one. The putter looks to be working. So right now, I think you'd have probably Scheffler favourite, Rory second.
Now, let's get into the action tonight. Full selection, players back from injury. We've one of the hottest properties in the Premier League in a position that we've been begging for some quality in over the last few years. Stars kind of aligning in relation to this one. We're playing against a team that are marginally below us in the world rankings. We are set up for a win here.
What makes you say that?
The factors that I've just mentioned. We've got to be leading to a point where I'm not saying that tonight is a gimme. If we do win, it'll certainly be by not much of a margin. You could easily make the argument that a draw is a good result, but, and there is a big but here, the latter factor, particularly around Evan Ferguson, surely a win tonight has to be something that Stephen Kenny is thinking about and talking about.
You're correct on both accounts that he is thinking it and he is talking about it. It's one of those games, to use the John Giles, you take each game in its merits. A draw could be a good result depending on what type of game it is, and generally away from home against a country like Greece, you'd probably take your traditional Irish 1-1 draw. But Stephen Kenny needs something. He needs a win in one of these games. He's had a lot of very strong performances going right back to the Slovakia playoff, Serbia, Portugal, Ukraine, and hasn't actually been able to get that victory. And I think the jury is very much out on Kenny at the moment, that people recognise the work he's done in bringing through all these young players, and so many of them are still incredibly young when you look at the age profile of this squad, but they need to start backing it up with being able to seal the deal. So there's a bit of momentum after the French performance, not the result, but the fact that actually Ireland stood up to France and were able to go and express themselves in parts of that game. Now they need to follow it up, because the whole thing sort of opens up if they could get a victory tonight. You follow it up against Gibraltar, and suddenly anything you get then in September against France or the Netherlands is an absolute bonus. So I think tonight he will be going out to win the game. I hope his team selection reflects that, and I still think it'll be a very tight game, as you said. These ones always are. They're two sides who you never feel are going to score 4 or 5 goals in a match.
I know a lot of the papers have gone with the lovely photos of Evan Ferguson and Michael Obafemi, a little bit of a bromance blossoming in the team hotel over the last couple of days, Nathan, but certainly from a couple of the newspapers this morning, suggested lineups or predicted lineups, Adamida maybe the favoured option alongside Evan Ferguson possibly. Do you think he's going to lean that way?
There's quite a few possibilities as to what he does up front. Like, does he go with a 2, and is it Ida and Ferguson? And then if it is Ida and Ferguson, what way do they work? Likewise with Obafemi. You look at Ferguson when he's played with Brighton, and quite often it's been Danny Welbeck, and Welbeck might be the one who drops that little bit deeper, and Ferguson might stay up if they're playing as the 2. I think you want to have Ferguson as your most advanced player. I know his link-up play is very strong, and at times for Brighton when they're playing against the better teams, he does have to drop into midfield to get himself involved. But I think, as Adrian was saying, we've got an 18-year-old superstar. You want to get him in positions where he can score goals. And the last thing you want is him having to drop deep to supply a Michael Obafemi. I think that will be a clear sign that he wants to go and win this game, that by playing 2 of them up front, up top, he loves Ida. Like, it's remarkable the journey we've been on with strikers over the last 18 months, where we thought Adam Ida was it. Adam Ida is the future. He's going to be our guy for the next 5 years. Then we have the game against Scotland last year, and it's Parrott and Obafemi up front, and we go, we got a strike partnership here that's going to see us through the next 5 years. And then Evan Ferguson arrives, and well, he's probably going to see us through the next 20 years is what we're hoping. That the other options is he just goes with Ferguson up front by himself, and then has the support he hopes from a Jason Knight, from Mikey Johnson, that the midfield gets up there and helps him. But he does have those options. Obafemi obviously hasn't played a huge amount. Ida's been getting back into it without scoring too many goals for Norwich. But since day one, from the under 21s up, Kenny has loved Adam Ida. So they've had 10 days together in that warm weather training camp in Turkey. They've been able to try things. They've had 11v11 games. So maybe he saw enough there from Ida as he returned to fitness, and saw the 2 of them together to go, actually, these 2, double trouble up top, can cause a lot of hassle for a Greek defence.
Like, I know you talk about the Welbeck going a bit deeper. We've seen Ferguson do a little bit of that for Brighton as well. Like, how can you try and, what's the best scenario for us to try and replicate that Brighton situation, where how often do you see him, whether he's playing deep or not, ghosting into the box, totally unmarked? He's playing off a shoulder, he's playing, taking a little run that nobody's spotted, and suddenly he's in space in the box and the ball's in the back of the net. That's the situation we need to create for him.
I think it's so difficult for Ireland to try and replicate what Brighton does, just because we don't have the same quality of player. All right, we can maybe have a threat down the wings with O'Dowda and Doherty in the way that they do with Estepunian at left back. We don't have a player like Enciso. Maybe Mikey Johnson is the closest who can bring the ball down to the byline, and that's where, as you say, Evan Ferguson just sort of goes in there, doesn't need to sprint frantically, just drops in behind a lead attacker. But I don't think you can replicate what Brighton do, the speed at which they attack, the quality that they have in midfield. I think Ireland need to go about their game plan their own way. It'll be interesting to see how much of the ball they have tonight. Like the Greeks, it's not Greece of 2004. They are happy to get on the ball, to try and dominate it a bit in midfield. Ireland have generally looked quite good on the counter-attack, which sort of goes against the whole Stephen Kenny ethos and what we thought it would be of Ireland dominating the ball home and away. So can Ireland get enough possession, I think, to feed and to create chances? And like, Ireland have created a lot of chances under Stephen Kenny. The problem is they generally haven't taken them.
Judging by my phone's weather app, it looks like you're going to have a lovely day in Athens, Nathan. 29 degrees highs, and then Paul O'Hare was kind of playing down the weather situation. I know the lads had the team had the warm weather training camp in Turkey over the last week or so, but by kick-off time it looks like it'll be about 24 degrees. Like, is it muggy? Is it like, will the players feel that at that time?
Muggy.
Or is that, yeah, okay,
muggy? If it's like yesterday, so today it does feel a bit warmer. Just been out for a walk around this morning, and yesterday it was hotter in Dublin when I left, to be honest. It was cloudy, it was overcast, and by the time the game kicks off, which remember is 10 o'clock local time here, at 10 o'clock here last night, it was nice. You would sit outside and have a drink, no problem, but you wouldn't be worried about playing a football match, and in fact you'd love those sort of conditions. So I don't think the weather is going to be an issue at all, and the fact they've had this warm weather training camp should work in their favour. The only issue is the fitness factor in that last half an hour. Like, John Egan hasn't played in nearly 6 weeks. Darragh O'Shea, if he selects him, which I think the jury's probably out as to whether it'll be O'Shea or Lenihan, like those players that have had very little game time. Matt Doherty, I was looking there at Matt Doherty's stats, remarkable. Started 27 league games in the last 3 seasons. Like 9 games a season. Like he's in one way you could say he's used to not playing a lot of football and been able to turn up and perform for Ireland. But with him having played 20 minutes in the last 6 months, like in a game like this where it is going to be incredibly competitive, it's going to be tight, like, does that count against you? And I don't know if any amount of warm weather training in 10 days can replicate what these players really need, which is first team football.
Most of the team selections across the back pages this morning are going for O'Shea, Egan and Collins across the back, Doherty and O'Dada wide. On that, in the 7 games across the last year since the Scotland win, we've had 1 clean sheet against Malta. Decent opposition, obviously, also some bang average opposition. What's going on there, and how do we start to draw a line under that? We need clean sheets.
Well, we need to draw a line on some sort of a wall on the edge of the penalty area to stop people shooting from 30 yards and just finding its way into the back of the net, which is where so many of the goals that Ireland have conceded have come from. That it's not teams cutting us apart with incisive play where they've been disorganised shambles. It's been standing off people from 25, 30 yards out and letting them have shots. And, often those goals have come in second halves. Again, I do wonder if there's a bit of fatigue, a lack of game time for players, that they just drop off ever so slightly. So when you look at defensively, like you look at those 3 who you say, O'Shea, Collins, Egan, like a rock solid defence. Darragh O'Shea hasn't played since the France game. He's been injured since then. So that's why that'll be a key selection, and do not be surprised if Darragh Lenihan starts in that back 3 ahead of Darragh O'Shea. I don't think there is a problem defensively. I just think they're conceding, like the XG I think is off the charts in terms of Ireland conceding far more than they actually should because of the quality of goal. But it can't be a coincidence that they concede that many goals from outside the box. This is a Greek team that you just would associate with scoring long-range goals. Their manager was a player who used to score brilliant long-range goals. They do have some attacking threat, even to the extent like the top goal scorer in the Dutch league is probably going to be sitting on the bench tonight for Greece. So they do have a good quality of player. The other thing for Greece tonight, and Gus Poyet, I'm sure it's in all the papers, saying this is a must-win game for either of these sides if they want to finish inside the top 2. They have that backup of a playoff. It's guaranteed. They are in League C. They won their league, so they're guaranteed a playoff. It's not quite as straightforward for Ireland. So does that mean they're going into tonight totally pressure off in a positive or a negative? I'm not quite sure.
Well, score prediction before we let you off.
I usually say 1-1 in these. I'm going to go 2-1 Ireland.
I'm with you.
Positivity, I love it.
Good man.
Evan Ferguson, 2 goals. This is the start of a beautiful thing.
Right note to leave us on. Good man.
Thanks, lads.
Thanks a lot. Nathan Murphy on the line there from Athens. He could be anywhere.
Could be anywhere,
He assures us that
the Acropolis was behind me there not too long ago.
Oh yeah. Heard that before.
Yeah. Knows his Greek architecture. Mikey Johnston off the bench to score the winner.
I think that's you sort of living. How much you put a $5 down on that? You're getting nothing. You're getting long odds on that.
Exactly.
I think Ferguson will score 1, and I think the other one will come scrappy goals from somewhere else. But we're in the habit of scoring nice goals.
I take any of them
of late. Yeah, 2-1 I like, and there's a bit of green tintedness about it, but I think it's not entirely unlikely.
Yeah, 1-0 feels more likely to me, but
yeah. We're not countenancing the idea of getting beaten, of course, which would be a whole other conversation. But I do think that there is that bit of, we were built for so many years, and look, we had amazing players in those positions, but on a real solid foundation at the back, and we've let that slip over the last while. And neither is there a huge amount of conversation about like our need to draw a line on the Richard Dunn Moscow style defending. Like, we do need to start putting together, particularly against the quality of, like, we'd Latvia and Armenia, we couldn't keep clean sheets against them. Like, that's something we need to start getting. And
yet you are fully optimistic and positive ahead of tonight.
Well, I'm leaning with saying they'll concede, but
right. Do you see this quote? It's Kathleen has kindly passed us into Damien Duff talking about one of his Shelburne lads heading off to join the Love Island cast.
Yeah.
Scott, we'll find out a second in there. He's the goalkeeper. I was shocked and saddened that Scott chose a villa in Mallorca full of beautiful single women over myself, the staff and the players. All jokes aside, I thank Scott for his services to Shelburne FC, and we wish him all the very best for the future, whatever that holds.
Scott van der Sluis.
Right, the goalkeeper. Like, not much of a decision, is it?
I saw when I read it yesterday, I kind of thought, like he's sort of packing in his career to go off into Love Island. But I mean, I guess that is a career choice. Because
he played in a cup game not so long ago, but he hasn't really got in ahead of the starting keeper for Shelburne, so game time has been limited. But this will improve his profile. You don't strike me as a Love Island man. or fan.
Why?
I think you have more sense than that.
Well, I took the first comment as a pejorative comment.
No, as in, I wouldn't be a fan of it. I know a couple of people within the Off the Ball office are, not to be named, but they're fans of it.
I watched a bit of it when Tommy Fury was in there.
Right.
Was that the same season that
Tommy and Molly May?
What was the girl from Longford?
Oh, Maura Higgins.
Yeah, I think that was the same run.
Same year.
I've watched nothing of it before, and I've watched nothing of it since. But it caught my attention for whatever that run was.
That's a load of crap, to be honest with you. Sure, look. Car
Crash says Oasis had one good album that was an homage to the Beatles, Slade and T-Rex. Blur have had lots of good singles. Pulp had two great albums and really good lyrics, so Pulp win.
Oof.
I mean, that's far more logic than I was applying to the conversation, but I'm willing to run with it.
Yeah, people pointing out that Ronan O'Gara's haircut is the winner between the three of us. I'm coming third in a lot of these lists, I have to say. Fergus Keogh said Adrian's hair is a cut above, if you see what he did there. I
do see what he did. I went in for a 2 for 2 with the young fella yesterday.
Oh, you did it yesterday as well?
Yeah,
so we both are fresh
out of it, yeah.
Right. What do you ask for?
One back and sides, and the technical expression what I ask for is, can I get one back and sides and a good bit off the top, please?
Just give us a wee trim in the top there.
And then that's
sometimes if I'm feeling, I'll ask for a beard trim if I'm feeling really. I did the beard myself though yesterday.
I get a little hot towel. The barber I go to, they always do a hot towel.
And
the guy yesterday threw in a little bit of which I haven't had before, a little bit of an extra sort of face massage.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it?
Oh,
sometimes they'll massage your hand as well.
Right.
Jesus, you leave feeling a million bucks.
Yeah,
you're absolutely another planet.
Neil McEnany says Blur proved themselves many years ago to be far beyond those debates. All great musicians. Changing sound, more akin to U2 than Britpop nonsense.
Right. Jesus,
wow.
Fair play.
Toulouse versus La Rochelle is on Premier Sport 2, points out James Linsky, for anybody looking to watch the game tomorrow night. Ronan doesn't think, he obviously believes that nobody here is watching anything that happens over there, and to be fair, I am watching.
I don't think he's
week in, week out, but I'm compelled to watch tomorrow night.
I don't think he's aware of the interest he's created over it. Like I find myself googling the La Rochelle results.
Yeah,
I'm a super fan.
Yeah.
And you obviously try and watch the matches where you can. But there's more of an interest here than he realises, I think.
It's 27 minutes past 8. Do keep those comments coming into us, whether it's about that Britpop debate or anything else you're having this morning, the game tonight or any of the games over the weekend. Please do keep the comments coming into us. Some great stuff there. By the way, a reminder that we're going to be hosting a night of celebration for the Republic of Ireland women's national team. It's all in partnership with Sky. It's coming your way on the 28th of June. It's in the Mansion House in Dublin. It's going to be an absolute cracker event to send the team off, and you can check out Off the Ball on Twitter to find out how to win tickets for that exclusive event. Sky are proud primary partners of the Republic of Ireland women's national team. Still to come on the show, we're going to talk to Maurice Brosnan a little bit later on to preview the weekend's Gaelic Games action. Will is going to be along with his power rankings from the hurling, and then we'll have Melissa Farrell, who was on the show with Will last night, talking about the Ashes. So that's all still to come. But before all of that, on the show, delighted to say that we're joined on the line by Sligo footballer Pat Spillane. Good morning, Pat.
Hi lads, how are you?
How are you getting on?
Good, thanks. Yeah, can't complain.
Where do you sit on the Oasis versus Blur versus Pulp debate? Is this like I don't even know, I don't even recognise these names, or
I'll sit on the fence on that
one. So Dublin, Kingspan Breffni Park tomorrow night. You're obviously a Dublin club footballer. Has Tony McEntee been mining you for insights this week?
No, he hasn't been. No, haven't been in touch now with Tom Feeder now. So we're focusing on ourselves ahead of the game.
Yeah, what an amazing season for Sligo. Obviously, when you piece it all together, promotion, the Division 4 champions, the Connacht final, the Sam Maguire football, the draw with Kildare. You've, I presume, ticked an awful lot of the pre-season goals at this stage.
Yeah, we have, in fairness. It's been a brilliant campaign for us. Obviously, we set out the start of the year to go up to get promoted as champions from Division 4. Obviously, we did that. When we saw the draw ahead of us, we set the target as going after a Connacht final, and of course to get a result as well in the group stage game, which I think not a lot of people expected from us. So it's been a brilliant campaign. We're going into Sunday now in bonus territory. Obviously, we're playing one of the top teams in the game, with no pressure on us, and obviously still alive. So yeah, it's been a brilliant year, and it's brought us on massively as a group. Are you talking about that still alive aspect? Yeah. So it's obviously you look, it's. It's a funny way the system is this year. coming into the game, we actually don't even have to beat the Dubs. It could come down to points difference on the day. So absolutely, we're still alive in this. There's going to be a shock somewhere this weekend, and hopefully we'll put in a good performance and put us in a good position to stay alive in the championship.
Well, I know when we had Tony McEntee on recently, Paddy was talking about the travelling from Crossmaglen for training and all the rest. How's it been for yourself, getting across to Sligo and Beacon for training sessions? Is it tough? You're picking up a lot of miles there.
Yeah, it's a busy schedule now. I suppose to give you a bit of insight into the week, the last session we had now was on Wednesday, so I suppose I would have left work early. You get over to the session, I was home at about 1:30 in the morning, then you're up then for work at 7 in the next morning again, so it's fairly full on. We've been training most of the year midweek in Sligo, so over and back on the Wednesday, over on the Friday, and then back to Dublin again on the Sunday. So it's a busy schedule, but it's enjoyable, so you don't mind doing it.
Does it take a bit of a toll on the body, Pat? Is there other stuff you need to do to recuperate from the travel alone?
Yeah, I suppose it's my second year now. In year one, I think it was a bit of a shock to the system. I ended up getting injured twice last year, so I think coming into this year I knew I had to put a bigger focus on the body. So I think the biggest challenge isn't really the fitness at this level. I think it's being fresh and available for training and matches. So when you're not training, it's putting a big emphasis on your recovery and what you're doing outside the sessions. That makes a big difference.
You made your Sligo debut in the National League game against Wexford, I think I'm right in saying, January of last year, Pat. So was Sligo always on your radar? I know your mother's a Sligo woman, so just for people unaware, so was that always a consideration even when you were growing up, that you might end up lining out for Sligo?
Yeah, I was always aware of the link, but it wasn't something I ever proactively went after doing. Like I was aware that it was an option, but I suppose after the Dublin Championship last year, the Sligo County Board reached out to me, and it did come as a bit of a surprise. But delighted I went for it. It's been a really enjoyable 2 years with the group now.
There is a scenario where Sligo finish third in the group. If they bettered the result against Kildare. And that could also mean Kerry finish second in their group. Like, is a potential Kerry-Sligo match in the preliminary quarter-final, is that something you would dread or embrace, or how would you feel about a fixture like that?
Yeah, I think don't want to jump ahead too much now. We've got a big enough test ahead of us on Sunday, but obviously that'd be something you'd embrace. Obviously, as a group, like we've come out of Division 4 this year. The way the championship is structured this year, we're playing against Division 1, Division 2 teams, and that's where we want to be as a group in a couple of years. We've a massive opportunity against Dublin now on Sunday. We won't get the chance to play Dublin again for another couple of years, so we're really looking forward to it. And ideally, if all going well, we keep developing the way we are, we'd love to be playing teams like Kerry and Dublin on a consistent basis.
Can you talk to us a bit more about the Sligo connection, Pat? Because I think probably a lot of people would have seen your name pop up on a Sligo shirt and been like, what's that fella doing there? But like Shane says, obviously your mum, where in Sligo is she from?
She's from Carrow, so she was John's GA club is the connection there. And
would you have been up there a good bit as a young fella, or what's the connection on that side?
Would have been up the odd time when I was younger, but not in recent years. All of the family had flown the nest, so actually there's no one from the Maloney's still left in Sligo now. So I suppose my first time back in Sligo in a number of years would have been for my first session last year. So so that was the connection. So it's the Maloney family from Carrow.
In our house at home, my mother's been exiled from Mayo, living in Westmeath, but we talk about Mayo all the time. Was it a similar scenario in your house in relation to Sligo? Was that a constant factor for you?
No, unfortunately not. I think we were in a hotbed of Kerry football down below in Temple, so Sligo football didn't get too much of a mention down there. But she wouldn't have been from I suppose a big GA family as such. So I don't think she ever would have been putting too much pressure on me to join Sligo. Yeah,
but at the same time, does it make it all the sweeter almost in some sense that she has been rooted in Kerry GA by association, obviously, for the last 4 or 5 decades, and now suddenly, this is my time to shine here, I can go back to my roots?
Yeah, definitely. They've taken a huge amount of enjoyment out of it, and for them as well, it's a brilliant excuse for them to get up home again. Obviously, my aunts and uncles as well have been going to the games as well, so it's been brilliant. They've taken a huge amount of enjoyment out of it, and I don't think they expected to spend as much time in Sligo as they have in the last 2 years, and that's down to the football team. So yeah, it's been brilliant.
How would you compare, Shane mentioned you're 2 years, nearly full 2 years now at this stage, with Sligo, and you're playing away with Bowden obviously in Dublin and doing very well on that front. How would you compare the standard of the Dublin Club Championship and the Connacht Championship, let's say?
It's St. Jude's I'm playing with. I'll have
Jude, sorry, yes, absolutely.
The lads will kill me if I let that one slip.
Adrian's a Kilmacud man, so he doesn't care, you know.
Yeah, it's in fairness to Dublin club football is a serious standard. I think in terms of the facilities there, the structure, how well organised the teams are, it's effectively inter-county standard. But I suppose the big surprise for me when I joined Sligo was just the quality of footballers that are there. I thought coming up from Dublin Senior Championship, it would have been a much smoother transition. I thought it's pretty much going to be on a level playing field here, but there's serious talent in the group here. I suppose for a lot of the guys probably coming from smaller clubs, not with the facilities or the coach, and maybe that I'd be lucky to have in Dublin club football, but there's brilliant work going on in Sligo now. Obviously you can see it coming through from the success of the underage teams and the colleges teams, so it's going in the right direction. But yeah, it's two very different setups.
Have you found that your own game, how have you found your own game over the course of all that? Has it taken you a bit of time to, I don't want to assume it's a step up, that's why I was asking you that previous question, but how have you found your own game moving into what I'm assuming is a different standard of football?
Yeah, it's improved a lot over the last 2 years. Obviously, still a huge amount of development to go. But the big thing really is just the time on the ball and the pace of the game. I think at the club level, even at Dublin senior club level, you just have that extra second or two on the ball to make a decision. At inter-county level, the big thing I found is that you get turned over and the ball is up the other side of the field in a shot. So it's just mentally, I suppose, is the biggest thing, is just getting tuned into when you're turned over, when you turn over a team. It's just so fast-paced. But yeah, it's been brilliant. I've worked with obviously really good coaches in Sligo now over the last 2 years, so it's been a big benefit. Are
you getting regular nuggets of advice from your dad, Pat? I know it was a different kind of game back when he played, but I'm sure he still has the arm over the shoulder and little bits of advice. He watches all your games, so I'm sure that's a comfort to have as well.
Yeah, he's a good asset to have. All right, he's he watches. He goes to all the games. He watches all the games. So yeah, he's brilliant. I think in fairness, the biggest vote of confidence I have from him at the minute is that he isn't giving me too much feedback, which is a good sign. He's just telling me to keep doing what I'm doing. So he's brilliant to have. And he's fully leaned into the Sligo Supporters Club now. Oh, he is. He's an ultra. He's a die-hard Sligo man now, in fairness, and he's been to every game this year. Right, so even if Sligo played Kerry, there'd be a discussion there. There wouldn't be a discussion. He'd be on the Sligo fence, in fairness to him. Yeah, he's fully converted. It's interesting. Yeah,
the full Sligo gear is out at the games, I understand. So that's he's definitely jumped the fence on that. Given the background, Pat, and growing up in that sort of environment, your exposure to the media and stuff like that, what was your relationship with, as you started to make your way with, whether it's Temple No or with Jude's or with Sligo? What's your relationship with the media, given that your background was so steeped in it from your dad's point of view?
There wouldn't have been any media exposure really, or pressure as such. I wouldn't have been marked out as, say, a potential Kerry player growing up or anything like that. Obviously, there would have been a lot of really good players coming through from Temple No at an underage level. My two cousins, Adrian and Killian, Tyke Morley, Gavin Crowley. So lads like that would have taken, I suppose, a lot of the attention off. So I suppose for me personally, I played a huge amount of sports growing up. Played basketball, soccer, really enjoyed it. I suppose I wouldn't have been someone growing up in Temple with ambitions of playing for Kerry or playing at a high level, so there never would have been any pressure or spotlight on me really when I was younger.
Yeah. Favourite Gaelic football pundit, past or present?
Jeez, tough one. I'll go Brawley.
Brawley's a favourite.
That won't go down well at home.
Just excluding your dad, obviously, I presume then.
No, we'll include Dad in that as
well. So on the pitch, we've touched around it, but if Sligo can better Kildare's result against Roscommon by 2 points, then you'll go through. So obviously with the Dubs and plan in mind tomorrow night, they're not at their strongest, and I'm sure that you're not overly considering that aspect of it ahead of the game, but is there a confidence that you can beat them?
Look, we'll go into the game to put in a performance. I think the last few games, Galway, Roscommon, Kildare, we've shown that we can put scores on the board and we can frustrate Division 1 teams defensively as well. I think the scoreline hasn't told the full picture in a number of these games. Like, we have competed with these teams. You looked at Kildare caused Dublin problems in the Leinster final. Roscommon drew with the Dubs a couple of weeks ago, and we had good spells against both of those teams. So we'll be confident we can put in a good performance next day, and we'll focus on our own game.
What impact has Tony McEntee had, Pat, in the squad? Because I remember reading quotes from Niall Murphy, one of your teammates, not too long ago, and he was saying Tony brought a wee bit of arrogance from being on winning teams as a player himself, and maybe a little bit of bite and grit were other words I think he used. So what has he brought to that setup?
I'd say he probably just instills massive confidence in the group. He just backs everyone to play their own game, back their own abilities. There's no pressure on us in terms of decision making. Like, he tells us, kick the ball, get forward, be attacking, be aggressive. I suppose it probably comes from some of the great cross teams he was involved in as well down through the years. But he just lets us do our own thing, fills us with confidence, really.
And when I look at the backroom team, like Paul Durkin, obviously massively important, a familiar face to any Donegal football fans, and the kick out obviously been so important in Gaelic football at the moment, and Colin McFadden as well. I mean, Colin was such a silky footballer to watch. So for someone like yourself, that must be of such benefit in training.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Obviously, Durkin's a brilliant man to have as well. But I suppose from my own perspective as an attacking player, like, I've really enjoyed working with Colin. I suppose one of the big areas for development for me was this year was looking at my movement and positioning, and obviously to have someone like Cullum who excelled at that for those great Donegal teams. He's brilliant. He's a great man to have around the training.
It must be quite inspirational to see the under 20 success as well in Sligo. Like, clearly there are a pathway of underage players come through the squad, and I know Tony, when he was on with us last time, said he didn't want to rush any of those lads coming through to the senior squad, but knowing that is behind you lads is I guess a nice cushion as well.
No, it's brilliant for the group. In fairness to the 20s who came in last year and this year, like, they're completely fearless. Like, I know a lot of the guys, you could come in at 18 or 19 even to a club team at senior level and be a bit standoffish. They've just torn into it. They've been really, really impressive now. In fairness, a couple of the guys from this year's 20 team have come into the training panel the last couple of weeks, and they're absolutely flying it. So it's brilliant to see, and there's a lot of lads coming through now who'll have long careers with Sligo.
Do you feel like people have been a bit dismissive of Sligo at times this season? You hear, like, I guess heading into every single game, Sligo have been underdogs, in championship terms. So has there been a bit of a write-off, even ahead of the Kildare game? I remember, but no one really gave Sligo a chance, and yet you saw the performance, and that's clearly what you lads are capable of.
Yeah, it's only natural if you're going to ask someone's opinion on who's going to come out on top of the match between a Division 1 and a Division 4 team. Of course, the educated guess is you're going to back the Division 1 team, but I suppose we've grown massively in confidence this year. Obviously, we went on a 9-game winning streak, albeit at a lower level. But we've shown we can compete with these big teams over the last couple of weeks. And I think you might not see the results of it now, but I think you'll really see the benefits of the season we've had next year when we go down into Division 3 again and we're playing against level opposition.
How have you found the championship setup itself, Pat? I mean, I guess from a player perspective, having matches week on week is a better alternative to training consistently. Shawnee Johnston was kind of saying that to us yesterday. If there's a 3-week gap between matches, you're going into training on the Monday, Tuesday after a match thinking, this could be anything, this could be running or whatever. So it must be a little bit easier from that perspective.
Yeah, 100%. From a purely selfish player perspective, we want games. we want to be playing, and obviously for a young team like ourselves as well, to have a system that's allowing us to play a number of games against these top division teams rather than straight knockout has been brilliant for us. Obviously there's a narrative around the setup, the structure, the competition and everything else, but from a player's perspective, we're all delighted with it.
All right, Pat, well listen, we wish you the best of luck tomorrow. We'll catch up with you again down the track. Thanks a million for jumping on.
Cheers, thanks lads. Thanks a lot.
That's like a footballer, Pat Spillane on the line there. They'll take on Dublin tomorrow. We'll have a little bit more GAA chat in a few minutes time. Maurice Brosnan of the Examiner will be on the line to look at that game and a few more as well. It is 8:43. It's Friday morning. You're watching OTB AM. We're delighted to have you with us wherever it is you are at. We're here with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. The night edition is available now. Some comments coming into us here. Robert Lynch says, fresh haircut festival later, no jar in studio. What a time to be alive for Shane. I don't know what that last point's all about.
No Giant Studio.
Yeah.
No, me and Jer have a lovely relationship. That wouldn't affect me. But yeah, you're right with the haircut and the festival upcoming. It's
not unrelated.
It's exciting. I see it. I'm going to have the phone battery pack to have the constant charge, so I'll have Northern Sound in the ear.
Oh yeah.
Catching up in Monaghan, Donegal tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. So I'll be right. It's Saturday evening at 6 o'clock at a festival, so you should be prime in the middle of.
You should be
dancing or partying or whatever. But I'll definitely have one earphone in for sure.
Do you ever get the thing where you get a haircut and somebody says, "Oh, haircut, you're going on holidays or you're going to a festival," or it's like, "Oh, a month has passed and I just needed to get my haircut"?
Yeah, how often do you get a haircut?
About every month.
Yeah, I've started. Yeah, about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Yeah,
3 weeks. Oof.
Sometimes 3 weeks. If you've a party coming up, I have an engagement party, for example, next weekend.
Yeah.
Not my own, but if I hadn't got the haircut this week, I'd be getting it next week for that. So sometimes you have to get a cut around events. Anyone else interested in this conversation? Because the comments this morning seem to be more around haircuts and Blur Oasis.
Tom McGahern says Dublin will hammer Sligo. Go on. No, you were going to say something there.
No, I can't.
So they need to win by. They need to better Kildare's result against Roscommon by 2 points.
Yeah,
and the likely outcome is that Roscommon beat Kildare, and Dublin do a decent job on Sligo.
All I'll say this morning is, don't be surprised if on Sunday, Roscommon managed to beat Kildare by more than Dublin beat Sligo. Okay. That's all I'm saying.
Go one step further to what you said to us.
Yeah, it is what I said.
Come on now.
So I'm predicting that the final table in that group will be Roscommon 1, Dublin 2, Sligo 3, Kildare 4 possibly. Because Roscommon would have beaten Kildare by more than Dublin would have beaten Sligo. That's just what I'm thinking.
You think Roscommon could do a good number on Kildare?
A good number. I think Davy Burke is a Kildare man. He absolutely is targeting this match. He will want to do a number on Kildare for sure, and
they could beat them by.
Well, I think Roscommon, the scores they've put up, and they've been scoring over 120 in different matches. Now the weather has played a part in that, but I think Roscommon could beat Kildare if they perform like I think they will, by 8 or 9 points. And then if Dublin, I know it's bad. Listen,
that is fiery.
That's with no disrespect to Kildare, because
that's total disrespect to Kildare. Because that's you saying Kildare are
so hot and cold. Kildare could come out and sweep Roscommon away tomorrow, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
No, but you're saying that your predicted outcome here is Roscommon by 8 or 9 points.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Wow.
I've said it now, so
it's fiery hot.
I just think Davy Burke, he is such a game by game manager, and what I mean by that is he is tactically astute and can develop. You saw it with the possession game against Dublin, forcing Dublin to come and get the ball, and then against Sligo the following week did the same, kind of adapted the game to fit Sligo. So I think they'll have a plan for Kildare and they'll run with it. That game is on in O'Connor Park in Tullamore. So at the same time, of course, Dublin Sligo's in Breffni. So it'll be interesting.
All games at the same time. Barry Power saying, what excuse will you use when we lose tonight? We did leave the door open for that being a possibility, Barry Power, but we're sort of, I hope, not unlike yourself, hoping that we can get the job done tonight, and also putting, I think, a reasonable case together as to why that might happen. Yeah. After that, it's sport, and that's why we watch it, and we shall see what happens. Neil McEnany says, Blur proved themselves many years ago to be far beyond these debates. All great musicians, changing sound. I said that already, more akin to you too. Cathal Madden says, up the banner. A car crash. Did we do this one already? Oasis had one good album. I did read that earlier.
Frank says, trimming the side of one's head isn't really a haircut, more akin to a shave. It's a fade though. It's trimmed with scissors at the top and then it's shaved at the bottom.
James McCullough says Maddox Street Preachers were the pinnacle of music back in the 90s, and they've continued creating great music to this day. They stood the test of time while all the others fell by the wayside. And Michael Wells says the Verve then standalone is above all the rest, considering Ashcroft's solo stuff is sublime. Super Furry Animals were top for me at that time.
There's a lot of opinions here on the old school music.
Sorry Car Crash, says Michael on YouTube, but Oasis had more than one good album. That's a bit unfair. Their first two albums still stand up, and I would propose their B-sides, Master Plan he has, are much better than songs on the album. They did have an awful lot of amazing B-sides.
No, I'm not going to disagree. I don't want to put my neck out there. I'm more on the Oasis side of things, probably.
Yeah. You'd be one to go with the flow, like that's
you're more of a hipster, are you?
People. That's
right.
Well, I mean, I thought I was kind of hipster until I've seen Manic Street Preachers, Super Furry Animals, the Verve coming in. Somebody mentions Frank says, "What about the often forgotten Space? Spider was a great album. The Female of the Species. Anyone? For anybody who's like, who's Space? Female of the Species." No?
I love Space. I have the NASA sticker on the front, but I mean...
Female of the Species?
Do you know? No, I'm not going with that.
You don't even know what I'm talking about? Unfamiliar.
Yeah.
You will hear that tune later on, you'll go, Space. I'm with you now. I mean, given the name, I would have thought you'd have been all over that.
No, even Kathy says to me that nobody has a clue what you're talking about.
Respect to Oasis, the ability to make every song sound the same. I got away with it, says Danny Mack.
Harsh.
And then this is my favourite of all the comments this morning. The Francie Brady says, a debate about one of the most mundane and overhyped, as the Brits love to do, periods of music evolution. Can we talk about anything else? Blur and Oasis are not comparable, different styles. I mean, you were right there, the Francie Brady. You were right there until you committed to contributing to the debate right at the very end.
Love it.
So thanks for that. There's a million comments coming in on that. I don't know what's happening with people this morning, but we will potentially come back to that a little bit later in the show. You are watching OTB AM. We're live with Gillette Labs. Get the Ultimate Shaver, your money back. Neon Night edition is available now. Will be up a little bit later on with his hurling power rankings. Before all of that, delighted to say we're joined on the line by the Examiner senior sports writer Maurice Brosnan. Morning, Maurice.
Morning, lads.
Where do you fall down on that debate?
I was always Oasis growing up, but as I became more and more of a disenfranchised Man United fan and saw all the city carry on, it kind of disenfranchised me from the band. So I'd fall down on your side on that one.
Of any other side, I suspect, on that basis.
Exactly, yeah.
We were just chatting to Pat Spillane there about the Sligo Dublin game and asking him about the case for Sligo here and obviously the permutations of needing to better Kildare's result against Roscommon, pointing out that Dublin are not at their strongest. Maybe it's a good time to be playing them. What's your expectation of the outcome from that game and that group?
So the other game in that is a lot more interesting, which I suppose we can talk about in a second. But just from a Sligo perspective, it's interesting. If you sat down at the start of the year, and I think Tony McAtee is on record in saying this, and asked what their goal was, I think they would have said get promotion from Division 4. That was their main priority, make a Connacht final. And after everything after that was essentially bonus territory. Whereas now, I spoke to Paddy O'Connor, their foot forward, during the week, and he's kind of adamant this isn't bonus territory. Bonus territory for them is making it out of the group. That was their goal all along. That draw at the very start makes that a very realistic proposition. And I think they have to be realistic about it and be kind of open to the idea that as long as they can limit the score difference here and try and stay relatively close to Kildare, that's success for them. It's the downfall in this whole championship structure, Adrian, is the reason it hasn't captivated people, is that you could have situations where teams have lost, in some cases 3 games in a row, and they're still ended up qualifying for the knockout stages. But from a team's perspective, you have to be realistic, draw a circle around it and try and tick that box.
We're still trying to figure out the answer to that question. I'm always sort of amused by the debate around, is it a good system or not? I think let it play out and let's see, particularly over the closing rounds. But you might have a situation where both Sligo and Kildare get beaten and Kildare will go through with a single point. I mean, I don't know what the conclusion to that is. It definitely is unusual.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny, the more you talk to players and management, the more you kind of realise they seem to like this system. But David Burke is speaking this week just about what the benefit he's gotten out of that and how styles make fights. They might set up a certain way against Dublin and do a totally different thing against Sligo in the Hyde. I was at that game actually. And then on the flip side, you've got other man, Park Joyce has said a very similar thing. I think Colin Collins last week said something similar. Players seem to get a lot of joy out of it. But when you talk about whether or not we like the system or whether or not the players and management like the system, that's irrelevant really. The thing has to capture the public too. The public has to come up with this system. That was what killed the Super 8s effectively in the end, is people kind of lost interest especially by those last rounds where it ended up being dead rubbers. And I would be concerned we're doing the same thing again, that the public for whatever reason just haven't been captured by this. The attendances have been pretty stark. I think there would have been, I'd say, an element of concern when you look at some games this weekend that you would have been convinced. If I'd said to you 6 months ago that Galway and Armagh are playing in Carrick-on-Shannon when there's still a lot on the line, I mean, that we would expect that game to sell out within hours. And when I checked this morning, there's still tickets available for that game. People have drawn the comparison with what happened in the qualifying last year, but just go back to the league this year, that was in the box. That was the same day Ireland played England. The same time, I think, actually, wasn't it, that Ireland played England on a Saturday night, and there was over 10,000 at that game, and for whatever reason the same people just aren't coming out right now.
How do you assess, Maurice, where Kildare are at the moment? Because you think back to the Leinster semi-final against Dublin, and it was a good performance, could have got a result out of it, and then what's happened since, the draw with Sligo, the 9-point defeat to Dublin in the repeat game in Nolan Park, it's really, really hard to know where they're at, and as I said earlier, they're hot and cold.
Yeah, exactly. You've hit it in one there. It's impossible. I can't answer that question, Shane. It's impossible to know where Kildare are at. They are just a complete yo-yo team. They seem to strike. So after the Sligo game, we asked Davy Burke about the way they, because that was the week after they played Dublin, we asked him about how they had played, how they set up against Dublin, and he said that when he watched Kildare play Dublin in the Leinster Championship, I'm talking about now, that set the template. That was what they adopted to get their draw in Croke Park, which I thought was an interesting thing. And then you fast forward a couple of weeks later, and Kildare do something totally different, like completely different when they meet Dublin again. They're way more open, which to a certain extent is laudable, but it wasn't ever going to win them the game. So it's really hard to get an accurate gauge on the team. They've changed it up a lot. Kevin Feely started full forward against Sligo. He was coming on off the bench a week later. We don't really know what's going on with Daniel Flynn. Paddy Woodgate inside is incredibly talented forward. They have it's the classic thing. I'm sure it's an answer you've heard before. They have all what you would want on paper, but there seems to be no definable style, no progression week on week. It's a really hard question. So I wouldn't be. I mean, if you're trying to predict that game, you wouldn't be overly confident that they'll adapt what you would need to do against Roscommon. So I think that's a huge game for David Burke. I don't think it's necessarily as big a difference as some people might. Like, he's managed against his club in the past. I don't know if the Kildare stuff would be weighing his mind as much as it would, but just purely from in terms of what's on the line, the fact that they could still top that group, I think that's a huge game for Roscommon, and it's just hard to have any faith in Kildare.
Shane is very much with you on that. He's trying to sort of back out of his position here, Maurice, from pre-show, but I'm holding to account. He feels that Kildare could get done by 8 or 9 points and Sligo could squeeze through. Is that a likely outcome in your view?
Yeah, it is. It's just as likely in my mind that Kildare end up winning this game, and we're all raving about them again, because as I mentioned, they definitely have it on paper. I think from a Sligo perspective as well, the one thing you would worry about is, so I mean, there's a huge gulf between, we've heard this before, between the lower division teams and top division teams, and the one thing you would worry about is that they were right there in the mix with Roscommon for about 50 minutes. They actually, Alan Riley scored a great goal, a bit long kick out Sean Carbine, and then Sligo when Roscommon put the foot down, they just weren't able to stay with them. And this is just inevitable. There's no way you can prepare for the athleticism that's our top teams, but that's the one real clear advantage Dublin would have. So there's every chance that you're looking at that Dublin Sligo game thinking, geez, Sligo are in with a shout here right up until that final quarter, and then Dublin usually kill teams there. Yeah.
So that's Group 3. That's on Sunday. And you mentioned Galway Armagh, so let's go to Group 2 also on Sunday. All of these games will throw in at the same time. You've Galway Armagh and Carrick and Shannon, and then Tyrone, Westmeath and Cavan. Just on that Galway Armagh game, you mentioned about the ticket sales, which has become a talking point in light of the fact that they wanted to play at Croke Park, which I felt was never to do with attendance, more to do with them trying to get a bit of exposure to playing there for potential benefit later in the year. But no shortage of recent games to try and track a prediction for Morris between the two of them. And despite the fact that Armagh could easily have won both last year's championship game and the league game this year, it does feel like Galway are just a far better team than them right now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny we went from talking about Kildare to talk about Armagh, because they are in a lot of ways in a similar boat. I think that it's the classic thing that even though their provincial record wasn't that strong and they haven't won any silverware, and they're also relegated from Division 1 this year, you still would have a bit of expectation around Armagh because of what you see on paper. They're totally hamstrung by this weekend's Asian in terms of the not having Rian O'Neill. I think that's a huge loss. And on top of that, I mean, it's hard to know with this new teams have to be submitted on Thursday nights, and Armagh named their team last night. I would be stunned if that team starts. It's just very hard to see how that was deemed to be the option. That, you know, they've got Callum Cumiskey, who for all intents and purposes is a defender named as in the half forward line, which so they're really going to set up with. I would just be very surprised if they set up with that format. And on the flip side, Galway have ticked basically every box that's been asked them. They've developed their squad really, really well from last year. That was the one killer, talking of teams being right there, stride for stride, right until the last quarter. Galway matched Kerry for 55 minutes effectively in an Ireland final last year, and just probably didn't have the reserves they needed. And they've gone about it very diligently, filling that up. So they've got Ian Burke back, they got Peter Cook back. They've been two huge additions. On top of that, John McKern, who missed all of last year with a shadow kneecap, he's back on the bench at the weekend. Keelan O'Careen, who anybody who watched the Galway under-20s this year, he was a very exciting centre forward, was drafted into the senior squad just for exposure, was so good that he was added to the 26 for this weekend. So they're really developing. Two teams that, you go back to that Ireland quarter-final, I think their trajectories have been totally different since then. Galway have ticked all the boxes, they've done all that's asked for them. There's fine margins between what has separated them teams, but at the same time, I think Galway are, they're on a similar path. I still think this game could still be incredibly close because of the nature of these groups, and that it's not a do or die game. But in terms of long-term prospects, you'd feel a lot more confident about Galway.
Yeah, and the Rian O'Neill factor as well might go against Armagh. But I was in Mullingar a few weeks ago for the Galway Westmeath game, and it was like so nip and tuck for about 50 minutes. Westmeath get a red card, changes the complexion of the game. Now, to be fair, Galway, regardless, would have won and had a hatful of goal chances, particularly in the first half, that they should have won it by an awful lot more. But the red card happens to Rick and Ellen. Comer comes in. He's, to be honest, hobbling around the pitch at times in a way that I thought, geez, even when the game was done, like, get him out of there. He kicks a couple of worldly scores, and Galway, he's over the line. Is there any update, because he was obviously injured enough in that game not to start him? Any update on him?
Well, he's back in. He's named to start. Now, as I mentioned, this stuff is, there is variance in this. There's certain teams so every team will submit a 26, and there's a standby list which isn't made public, but every team can resort to that if there's any injuries. So just for example, I think Mayo in almost every championship game this year have turned to their standby list. So they've named the 26 as they all do on the Thursday. But some teams don't do. I'm sure this is some teams like to train on a Friday night, for example, Adrian. Some teams like to name their team on a Zoom the day before a game. That's just the way the nature of it. So it's hard to put too much stock in the teams that were named yesterday. But as of right now, Comer is named and fit, and he's going to start. They've gone full bore effectively. They've got this Burke, Walsh, Comer are all named to start. But yeah, he has been. It's no surprise. Like he went down when he went down against Roscommon in Pearse Stadium in the league. There was a lot of concerns about the nature of that knee injury, the way he jarred it, and that just has to be managed for the rest of the year. And that's another reason. And again, why I think the players and management put more stock in this current system than the public are is because they don't want those 3 games in a row, because inevitably, it is just absolutely inevitable, you're going to pick up an injury or two game on game, and that's the difference between winning and losing a quarter-final. You look at Kerry now, for example, the fear Gavin White isn't named in their 26. The fear is that if they have a game next week, are you going to rush them back to try and get them to play? Because that's going to be a knockout game. Whereas if they just had that bit of leeway to solve all that kind of stuff, it would have given them so much more comfort, I think. And I think that's the same for a lot of teams. I think it wouldn't be surprised to see teams pick up knocks as they go, because the nature of this is that while we all want to be playing games, you don't want to play games week on week on week, because inevitably you're just going to pick up wear and tear.
Tyrone, Maurice, like Enda McGinley was speaking during the week, and he genuinely believes they're strong dark horse contenders for the All-Ireland this year. And you think back to the Monaghan game in Omagh earlier in the summer in the Ulster Championship, and they lose that one late on, but what they've done since has been slowly progressive and almost impressive as well. The win against Armagh, and even the defeat to Galway, you could give them a little bit of leeway for that one, but of course the 14 men for the majority of it. So are Tyrone coming like in a scary enough way for other teams, because it's kind of under the radar almost?
Yeah, you might sense a team here, lads. I think their ceiling is very high. Their floor is pretty low as well, and we've seen both this year. Like they've been able to mix the good and the bad, oftentimes within the same game. I did think the Armagh game should have been a bit more of a cause for concern. Like it was all there for them to put the foot down, really kind of send out a mark here. You're at home, you're an extra man. This was the big thing we'd heard about the Galway game, is that Stirling were hamstrung because they were playing with 14 men. You couldn't really hand into that performance. And then a week later, they just don't take advantage of it in the way that you would like to see them way, and in multiple different ways. So they're trying to force shots. At one stage, Matty Donnelly dropped the shoulder, tried to go past the man, and pops the ball back out to Michael McKernan, who takes kind of a low percentage shot from near the wing, and it goes wide, and you're thinking, okay, this is probably a stage of the game where you need to try and manage it and keep the ball. And then when they try and do that, it nearly ends in disaster, with Niall Morgan dropping the ball at his feet, and they very nearly end up conceding a goal at the end. So they're like, from the flashes of good we've seen, they absolutely are capable of winning an Ireland. There's no doubt about that. From the flashes of bad we've seen, they wouldn't win a quarter final.
last one for me on Group 2 before we go into the other games on Sunday in Group 1. David Brady was on with us here a month ago, and he predicted that Westmeath would win a game in Division 2. Now he's down to the last one, and it seems like fairly unlikely. I'm not sure, to be honest, which of us was grieving more after the Armagh game, but anyway, Westmeath needing a 5-point win over Tyrone in Cavan there to progress, or any win in Galway would, if Galway could do them a scoring favour, which may be less unlikely. But that order of that table, let me just get it up here in front of me, into Galway, Armagh, Tyrone and Westmeath. What's your sense? Like a Galway, Tyrone, Armagh, Westmeath might be a likely top to bottom of that come close of play. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and that means Armagh are going away. So Armagh could very feasibly end up going away to Kerry next week. That's the benefit of this. That's the reason I like this system, that there is a significant consequence of coming third. You're going away to potentially a very big game in that. So I'll agree with you. I think Kerry and Tyrone are 1 and 2, Armagh 3, and Westmeath. That Armagh game was a killer. Like that was our chance for a win. That was the game they should have won, and I just don't foresee it this weekend, unfortunately, Adrian.
Yeah, that's the interesting. It's so interesting the way that's the way the groups have panned out. Like you say, Armagh could well be going away to Kerry next week, and yet it's also quite likely this weekend that Kerry get the win against Louth. And Cork, I mean, if you're looking at it again, that there could be I don't want to say surprise, but if Cork were to beat Mayo, it's not the most unlikely scenario where you could have Kerry finishing top of that group. Although, albeit it could come down to scoring different. It all finish on 4 points. You could have Mayo, Cork, Kerry all on 4 points. Yeah. See, Mayo at the moment are on 4 points, Kerry on 2, Cork on 2, and Louth on 0. Yeah, it's possibly most likely, I guess, Maurice, that Kerry would finish second.
If Mayo win, the game that you would have most intrigue about this weekend for me, anyway, lads, is I think that's the headline game is the Kerry. The Mayo Cork game. Yeah. I think there's a huge amount of, just in every sense, there's a huge amount of intrigue in this game from a bunch of ways, on the sideline, on the pitch, from what's the consequences in the group. Like if you break it down, so Kevin Walsh is in coaching Cork right now. Kevin Walsh had a great record against Mayo. He brought out a book during COVID, which was brilliant, like a really good GA resource and a really good coaching manual. But because it was during COVID, it didn't have a launch, and probably went, to my mind, it went slightly under the radar how good that book was. But interestingly, I mean, just go through it. A lot of the things he talked about coaching wise is how he set up against Mayo and was able to, he breaks the pitch down to 5 lanes, and the 2, 3, 4, the middle lanes basically, he'd clog them up, force Mayo out to the channels and turn them over, give them up to them short. And that was against Stephen Rochford, who's now in as the assistant manager for Mayo. And also in that book, he dedicated a lot of time to their rivalry with Roscommon. And when Roscommon bet them in the kind of final, and the Roscommon manager who marched on the sideline to shake his hand early, Jose Mourinho style, who was Kevin McStay, and he got him back a year later, made sure, and this is all on the record, went back, made sure to enjoy that interaction when they bet Roscommon and Doraine in the kind of final a year later, and shook his hand too. So you've all that intrigue, but then there's just what that means for on the field. I think is really interesting, particularly in the context of the Louth game. If you're like the traditional analysis of Mayo for a couple of years now has been that when they have open road in front of them, they're electric. They're such an athletic team. They're incredibly, they just can tear teams apart. When you drop off and force them to kind of break down a set defence, they will end up taking pot shots. They might run down blind alleys. And the fact that Mayo had no seeming answer to that against Louth, I think is really interesting. I think it is. I don't foresee Cork being necessarily very open this weekend, but I think if they do the same thing again, there's a bit of pressure on Mayo to prove to most of all themselves that they can deal with this system, that they know how to pull it apart, that they're capable of doing it. If you go back to the Kerry game, actually, just on that team, right? In the first half, Kerry tried to play open front foot football, and Mayo effectively tore them apart. In the second half, and there was a lot of moaning about this in Killarney at the time, Kerry dropped off. They conceded the kick out. They were lining players up along their 45, not to the Louth extreme now, back on their own 45, on Mayo's 45, but they let Mayo got it off short. But if you just look at the outcome of that, in that game, there's 21 kickouts in total, right? And you can divide it 50-50, let's say. So 11 go long and 10 go short. And from the 11 go long, they score 1-6. That's, a long ball, Aidan O'Shea catches it in the middle, wins a free, immediately turns, moves the ball up, and Owen McLaughlin scores a goal. But from those, the other half of all that went short, they only scored 3 points because they're trying to run through every single line. So Cork can double down on that, and then suddenly the ball is in Mayo's court, how are they going to deal with it? Can they deal with it? Because if they can't deal with it, every single team is drawing a circle around that, and for the rest of the summer they're going to meet the same thing again and again and again.
We should mention the Group 4 that we haven't touched on as well, Maurice. The Mini Ulster Championship plus Clare. Clare, of course, the only team not able to progress going into this last round of fixtures. I was at the Monaghan Clare game the last day. Monaghan impressive, 123. A lot of different scorers, good spread as well. And Jack McCarnan was just supreme, 9 points in 8 of those from play. And Donegal, I watched that game as well against Derry. Oisín Gallen was supreme in that one. So it's kind of come down to the way that the table lies, and that one Monaghan currently top themselves and Derry level on points and scoring difference, but Monaghan nudge it on points scored. So you'd imagine Derry playing a Clare team with nothing to play for would have the advantage heading into this weekend, although Monaghan will fancy the Donegal game in Omagh as well, Maurice.
Yeah, and added into that as well, Shane, that Derry gave Clare a good hiding in the league as well. You could see them running the table effectively this weekend, unfortunately. The other game, I think it's really interesting. Donegal have, from the down semi-final, their recovery has been fairly admirable in terms of that they didn't let it slide. They put in a very credible performance. I mean, they were 6-1 down against Clare, and you were starting to fear about their prospects in this entire group. And from that point to now, they've shown loads of elements of good coaching. As you mentioned, Oisín Gallen has been absolutely electric. I think Monaghan are, I would argue, probably one of the best coach teams in the championship, and they're also a testament to the whole point of this structure, which is you kind of learn game on game. The way they fixed their flaws from the Ulster semi-final versus when they played Derry again in the round robin, I think was pretty incredible. So you'd still give Monaghan the edge on that one. They're probably a testament as well to a team that can strike that balance between what we've seen a lot now recently, which is the reserved kind of defensive football, but they also are well able to mix. And you mentioned those 9 points Jack McCarran scored. The most impressive thing that I saw him doing that game was the crossfield pass in the second half, which was just
Ryan O'Toole, ridiculous.
Yeah,
it was bad foot.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. That's a pass that you hear oftentimes you can't play those passes anymore, and when they don't come off, Shane Walsh against Armagh in the quarterfinal last year, you're tearing your hair out, but when they do, they're just absolutely electric. And it's especially when you've got these overloads on one side of the pitch and you can just flick a ball as easily as he can. That stuff is invaluable, and that I don't think that happens. It's not totally off the cuff. Like there's a means to that madness. Oftentimes you see Derry are so good at this as well, and this is what I think Monaghan were adapting. They'll bring a lot of players over to one sideline, the space created on the other side, and then if you can get a quick crossfield ball, you're creating space. So I think Monaghan are moving nicely. I would fancy them to beat Donegal this weekend, and there's not many teams that would want to play them the way they're improving game by game for the rest of the championship.
Just before we let you away, Maurice, you've been writing in the Examiner this morning about Mark O'Connor's 100th appearance for Geelong, and remarkably only the 6th ever Irish player to do it. Yeah, it's probably an achievement that goes under the radar here. Just naturally, it's so far away. It's a sport that we probably don't know a huge amount about, and on top of that, it's falls in the middle of an absolutely blockbuster GA calendar, which people just don't have the space to deal with it. But I think it's a kind of a remarkable achievement, and he's a testament to a guy, Adrian, who, like from minute one, he was probably destined to be an elite star if he wasn't so hamstrung with injuries. Like he was crippled with knee issues right until before he left, basically. And it's probably the motivating factor is why he went to the exposure to a professional environment and the rehab and doctors and all that comes with it. And from resolving that, I think he wasn't actually able to run at all before he left. So there's a place at West Kerry Fitness. It was a bowling alley, and they converted it to a gym in Dingle. And he just spent every single day upstairs there emptying himself on a watt bike. Arrives at the club very light but incredibly fit, and the Geelong do this. It's a 15-minute. You just run as basically as hard as you can for 15 minutes. 15 minutes doesn't sound that long, but when you're going flat out amongst Aussie rules players, it is pretty difficult. And he blitzed that, so straight away there was a bit of they expect guys who are arriving to maybe be in the bottom 10%. I think he was the opposite. So there was a bit of excitement immediately about what he was going to end up going on to do. And from that point on, he just excels. Makes his debut after 8 rounds, I think. He's in their leadership group after 3 years. He's now reached 100 games and he's still only 26. It's kind of a remarkable rise. I'd say there's Kerry people watching on thinking, wouldn't we love to have him, particularly now with David Moran gone and the bit of a void that's in midfield. And on top of that, he comes home for Dingle last year and just shows glimpses of he could still be an electric game footballer. So I wouldn't rule out the prospect of seeing him for Kerry again. But the story in itself is pretty remarkable, and what he's achieved. And on top of, he's in that 6 for 100 games, but he's only one of 3 to win a premiership, along with Ty Kennelly and Zach Tohey. So it's a fairly remarkable career. He's the youngest of them all. There's
there's absolutely no doubt that it'll only continue to rise and rise.
He might do a Ty Kennelly on it at some point and come back. Maurice, enjoy the games over the weekend. Catch up with you down the track.
Thanks, lads.
Thanks a million. Maurice Brosnan there, senior sports writer with the Irish Examiner. It's 13 minutes past 9. You're watching OTB AM. Stone Roses are nearly a band all out on their own, asks Michael. Had that Manchester influence, but still very unique. Radiohead, which I can't believe we haven't mentioned them up to now, and Manic Street Preachers are both excellent and aged really well.
Stone Roses top the list for me.
OK Computer, possibly one of the greatest albums of all time.
Oof.
Remove the possibly.
Wow. You're throwing out the hyperboles this morning.
Fergus Keogh had said before that, can I toss Radiohead and the Stone Roses into the 90s Brit band debate? For sure you can. We'll have any of that. Babylon Zoo's Spaceman, as Bangor song, we had that already. For Scotland beat Kildare by 8 or 9 points, they'll be second in the group as Dublin will shred Galway, says Fergus Keogh. Cian Rowe says that I'm getting a
Dublin will shred Galway.
Dublin will, did I say Galway? Dublin will shred Sligo.
Yeah.
Cian Rowe saying that I'm getting a cracking tan.
Well, there you go.
I'm spending a lot of time on the sidelines this week, the last few weeks.
Factor 50.
Many All-Irelands are on the club, and there's like over I don't know how many hundreds of kids are down there, but it's...
Where are they on?
My young fella's my young fella's captaining Limerick. So the 4 games so far, Shane.
The armband?
2 wins, 2 losses. No armband, I'm just trying to talk to him about the basics of a captain. Leading by examples.
Right.
By example, yeah.
Tell him to give me a
He's getting stuck in. He's really getting stuck in, to be honest. He's
brilliant.
He's flying it. At that age, you find from game to game, sport to sport, day to day, they're really concentrated and into it, and they look like they're going to set the world alight.
Yeah.
And then they're like practicing different dance moves and staring at the sky, and
the whole Fortnite stuff and all
can happen. Like,
yeah, do the kids at that age? I've seen the thing on social media before. The kids that age start to bless themselves when they walk out on the pitch.
The soccer, yeah,
and then they put the 2 hands up for the corner.
You see, the same
they don't even know what they're doing.
Playing soccer in GA, and it's just they had the mini World Cup the previous weekend, where he was playing for Holland.
Yeah,
temperamental on the big stages. Once the shorts are there, what happened? But incredible movement and community, I must say.
Right,
amazing setup. They've done really good jerseys from this year as well. They're in their final today, Shane. 2 wins and 2 defeats. Yeah, so
that's good. That's good learnings both ways.
Exactly.
Best luck to them in the final.
Yeah. So that is that. The debate about the bands has really set the comments alight this morning, and do keep that coming into us. Before all of that, here's what's coming up on the OTB Podcast Network today. It is a little bit of John Giles from Thursday night, last night with Will. You'll have your football daily dose as well, and Cian Tracy on all things rugby, including Sean Klein, as you can see on your screen there. After the ads, Will O'Callaghan's hurling power rankings. Before all of that, the cash machine.
Off the balls, summer cash machine.
Eric Grannell was repairing a shredder in a forest in Blanchardstown yesterday, as you do on Thursday, when he answered the cash machine call. Luckily for Eric, he had the number saved in a safe place, and he is bringing the family away on holiday as a result, and you could be just like Eric. He was our 7th winner so far in June, and today we're going to have someone to be our 8th winner, as we have a guaranteed winner of €50,000. Taking part is easy. Every day we'll give you an amount. You take note of it, and it's if we call you at 3 o'clock, you tell us the amount and you win the cash. Don't forget, it's a guaranteed winner. Someone will start the weekend by winning a life-changing amount of cash. The summer cash machine has been reloaded. The amount is €50,353.87. €50,353.87. To enter, text OTB and only OTB to 57557. That's 57557. And if it's you, we call back after 3 o'clock on Friday, June 16th. You answer the phone within 5 rings, tell us the prize amount, and win the money. Simple as that. So text OTB to 57557. That's OTB to 57557. Cost is €2.50 plus your standard message rate to play. You have to be over 18. You're playing across the Go Loud network of stations. Full terms are on our website at offtheball.com. Get your entry in by 3 o'clock on Friday, June 16th. The cash machine will then randomly pick one entry. It could be calling you, and you need to pick up the phone. So answer within 5 rings, tell us the prize amount, and the cash is yours. €50,353.87. €50,353.87. €50,353.87. Text OTB to 57557. That's 57557. Back after these with Will and his hurling power rankings.
Off the Balls Summer Cash Machine.
Toe pocket goal! Ahead of this summer's football in Australia, we're going to Australia.
It's what dreams are made of.
We'll be hosting a night of celebration for the Republic of Ireland women's national team in partnership with Sky, and it's coming your way on June 28th in the Mansion House in Dublin. What a moment for the Republic of Ireland. We'll be joined by the full squad.
I don't know what we've just done. You know, I did believe we could do it.
As well as some other great guests as we give the team a night to remember. Emma Byrne is in tears.
I can't believe it. We've finally done it.
Tune into all of Off the Ball's channels for a chance to win tickets to this exclusive event.
Sky, proud primary partners of the Republic of Ireland women's national team.
Out believe together, and we can go anywhere.
They are going to the World Cup Finals!
Really special moment for the two lads in the Croke Park Hotel before they even got to go to the game. Before they even got to go in and watch the Limerick and Clare game, they bumped into a man of folklore on this hurling pod. Johnny Glynn, back to play for New York for the week, and look who the boys bump into. There he is, Johnny Glynn, with the lads before the game. Skell, you weren't able to tempt him to go back and play with Galway again, no?
Well, I asked him, right, yeah. I actually think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he said he's going to transfer him back to Ardrahan.
Really?
So that's a huge plus for Ardrahan, to have someone like him to come back and play in their club championship. So baby steps, Will. Baby steps. We get him back to Ardrahan. We get him in the county at least, or the country. We'll work from there.
That's interesting.
He looks in fair shape too, though. He looks in fair shape.
Yeah, big man. Absolutely, yeah. So is he thinking of moving back to Ireland for a while, so?
I won't go that far now. I think there was a year, not sure what it was, it could be the year before last, whereby he actually commuted, would you believe, from New York back to play in the club championship. So you can imagine how difficult that was, Joe, on the body and the mind. So I don't know, is he going to do repeating that, or is he going to contemplate moving back full time? But yeah, it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility for him to commute again.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Some of these critics, these pundits, I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
I'd like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just miss you like you know, you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
All right, 9:20. You heard it in the ads there. Will, welcome, by the way. Good morning to you. He's there. We'll hear from him in a second. That clip that you heard was Will in full Technicolor and the latest episode of the Hurling Pod. Paul Murphy, James Cahill talking about meeting the pod cult hero Johnny Glynn at the Leinster final and how he's coming back to Ardrahan. So hurling, it's anyone's game. Off the Ball is teamed up with the Senior Hurling Championship sponsored Board Gosh Energy to uncover stories highlighting the positive impact hurling has had on people's lives. For full competition details, you can visit boardgoshenergy.ie/BGEGAA. Well, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are we?
Good. Did any more come of that Johnny Glynn story? Was that just like a bit of I'll lash that out there and see what happens?
A little bit. I mean, basically two cult heroes from the pod this week came up in prominence from Croke Park at the weekend. One being Johnny Glynn, who went in to watch Galway against Kilkenny, having played for New York against Carlow in the Tailteann Cup the day before. And it was one of those where the WhatsApp group was pinging all day because Murphy and Skell decided to go to the Leinster final together and then still come back and do the live pod afterwards. And first of all, I get a message from Murph saying, "You're not going to believe who we've bumped into." And there it is, the photo with Johnny Glynn. The lads are having a bit of a chat and Skell's doing his best to try and convince him to come back and play for Galway. Now, if he is going to come back in 2 to 3 week periods to play for Ardrahan, that is a massive boost for them, for the Galway Club Championship, to have him coming back from New York. My understanding from the other conversations that happened with James Skell is that he's still going to be based in New York, but he wants to come back and play in this summer for club. And then
which he's done before.
He's done before, yeah, but it's a huge commitment to do that for your club. Then the guys bump into Showtime Murph, who's a regular contributor in the YouTube comments, and he pops over and buys them a pint in the Croke Park Hotel first. And then Mikey Butler Paul Murphy's official favourite player ever scores a remarkable goal in the Leinster final as well. So it was a day for cult heroes at Croke Park for the guys in the pod, and it meant that we had a sign that went up in the middle of our live podcast of the weekend which said "I love Mikey Butler" over the head of Paul Murphy. So he's officially confirmed his love for a guy who has succeeded him as Kilkenny cornerback.
Yeah, he's a big hit, all right, with Kilkenny fans, it must be said. So let's get into it. Well, I was trying to tap you up for a bit of an insight last night, but you were keeping your cards very close.
I tried to be cryptic, otherwise you would have given away the whole conversation.
Absolute professional, which I would totally expect from you. Go on, lead us on here.
Well, okay, I imagine we want to start towards the bottom of the power rankings then. So only 3 of the teams in the bottom half have actually played since we spoke last about the power rankings. And Meath have to be respected for what they've done this year, a double, winning Division 2A of the National Hurling League and then completing the Christie Ring the week before last. So they're up to 17th. Kildare go down to 18th. As you mentioned before, such a disappointment for Kildare with the way that the summer went, given that they got to the final in Division 2A against Offaly, had played reasonably well in Portlaoise before that, and you're thinking this is a good platform for them going into Championship in the Joe McDonagh, but then they were relegated, so they will go down to the Christie Ring, with Meath coming up to the Joe McDonagh as Division 2B champions from this season as well. So Meath up to 17, Kildare down to 18. Down Kerry, Laois haven't played since we spoke last. Offaly stay in the same position. They were in 13th ahead of the Joe McDonagh Cup final, beaten by Carlow, who are in 12th place. So Carlow going up to the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship for next season. Your own Westmeath going down, Antrim going up as a result of their relegation on the final day of the Leinster Championship, where they lost out to Antrim, and they thought that Kilkenny were going to do them a favour against Wexford, but Wexford surviving on the last day with that remarkable win, a dramatic win as well against Kilkenny. And I know the Westmeath players were huddled around at the end of the game because they finished 10 minutes before the Wexford game due to the crowd congestion at Wexford Park, and they really felt that Kilkenny had got a late goal, but it was disallowed. And in the end, Wexford stay in the Leinster Championship for next year. Westmeath have to rebuild in the McDonagh, and they drop down to 11th place. So that explains the bottom half of the power rankings, lads. Any questions or points on that so far?
No, nothing to be said. It was a bizarre season for Westmeath, and everything looked so amazing at one point, and then it all went to the proverbial.
I'm just upset that the Laurie Maher champions aren't in it. The top 18 at the moment, Monaghan. I know they're.
I knew you'd be fighting for that, Shane.
Yeah.
You see,
Monaghan is a dual county now, Will, in case you didn't know.
And I would encourage that entirely, by the way. And I'd encourage anyone to listen to Martin Fogarty, who spoke to us a few weeks ago about the development plan to try and get hurling going in Ulster, and maybe where that is at this point. But I made a kind of a clear outline about the way we were going to do this at the start, that basically you had to be in the top 18 to get onto the power rankings. I had a few Meath fans when they were going well in Division 2B of the league saying, hey, where are we on the power rankings? I said, if you win Division 2B, you'll get into the top 18. That happened. They've now won the Christie Ring, and they're now up to the lofty height of 17th, which I think is the highest we've ever had them in the hurling power.
It's fair.
I think the true spirit of the power rankings has to be that you can just do what the hell you want. Add in a team will make us do the anti-Seb Blatter. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, look,
can we call it here?
Place. If Monaghan can get themselves up into the Joe McDonagh, or if they get into the top 2 flights in the league, I promise you, Shane, that we will have Monaghan inside the hurling power rankings.
That's a deal.
At that point.
C. Bracken has been in touch saying, should be interesting where the chips fall now in the top 6 in the power rankings. Reckon they'll stay the same. Well, we shall get there, C. Bracken. You hold your horses just a second. So you can just throw up that last screen that we were looking at there, because I think it had. Yeah, so this takes us up to 7, Will. So there's a couple of changes.
Yeah, I mean, look, Dublin are getting ready for a preliminary quarter-final this weekend against Carlow, so they're up to 7th place. I think Waterford, despite the fact that they beat Tipperary in the last round, go down 1 place into 8th. Their championship has come to an end, but maybe that is a morsel of comfort, the way that they played against Tipperary when the shackles were off a little bit. I thought Waterford put in a very good performance, as disappointed as Tipperary will be to have not got through to the Munster final when it seemed that it was very much in their own hands, and I think most of us had written down that it was going to be Tipperary against Clare ahead of the final round of fixtures for that Munster final. I think Waterford have to drop down to 8th. Wexford preserved their position in 9th, given that they stayed up in the Leinster Championship at the end. What a rocky season, but a roller coaster end to it, beating Kilkenny to stay up on the final day. So Dublin into 7th. If you want to throw up the graphic from 6 up, this is where C. Bracken will either be right or wrong.
C. Bracken is bang on the money. It's status quo. Will, you have bottled it and refused to make any changes whatsoever.
I would like to argue the reason for this is that the power rankings back at the 3rd week of May were so well considered that they actually played out to be what happened afterwards. But the reality is that if in some of those games, even at the weekend just gone by, if Galway managed to defend their goal in the last play of the game, and like we talk about last gasp goals sometimes, and that often is defined as a goal that goes in, but there's still one more play or two more plays afterwards. This was literally the kind of Hollywood moment where Cillian Buckley, who's never scored a championship goal in his life for Kilkenny at senior level, steps up, edge of the box, the ball comes back out from Pádraig Mannion's kick, couldn't have landed to him any better, and even though it was one of the most streaky shots you'll ever see, it finds its way into the Galway net. Kilkenny do 4 in a row. Kilkenny have got a very direct path now to the All-Ireland final, and Galway have to go on a very, very difficult side of the draw. If that game had been blown up the play before, or if, I don't know, Mannion had stood on the ball and TJ's free had been blocked in the line,
you'd still have
Galway would have went up in the power rankings. No, they would have went up. They wouldn't be sitting in 5th place. But I think you have to respect what Kilkenny have done by going 4 in a row by keeping them in 3rd.
Talk to us about Galway, because like they've come up short in the championship against Kilkenny in the Leinster final. They've Limerick and obviously in the semis. They did beat Clare in the league, but again lost against some of the bigger teams, Limerick and Cork, and came up short there. There's an expectation obviously with Galway that they're in the top 2-3 teams in the country, but are they starting to have enough of a bank of results, bad results against the bigger teams, to suggest that there's something amiss here?
Look, I think they generally mix it very well, actually, with the best teams in the country, and that's why I'm intrigued to see Galway against almost certainly Tipperary in the quarterfinals, and then potentially, if they were to overcome Tip, to play Limerick in a semi-final. Because I think Galway is a tricky matchup for Limerick if that does turn out to be a meeting in the last 4, but you can't help but be a little bit worried about the inconsistency about Galway so far this season, where they will put in very good periods within games. I'm thinking back to the Galway game at Nolan Park, particularly when Brian Kincannon was doing untold damage within that game. The second half, after they've been so poor and went 12 points behind against Dublin at Croke Park, and then played really well in the second half, they played well in stages of that Leinster final. It was a Leinster final that really came to life, I think, in the last 10 or 15 minutes. There was definitely a feeling in the first half, especially when we watched the Munster final, which had a huge intensity about it. As much as Owen Cody said there's plenty of hurling in Leinster when he went up to collect the cup at the end, he is correct in that, but the first half kind of maybe lacked that cut and thrust that we'd seen in the Munster final, but they went hammer and tongs in the last 15-20 minutes, and Galway showed that they're right up there with Kilkenny. They obviously drew in the group stages of the championship as well, so when Galway are on it, Galway are right up there with the very, very top teams. It's just this year I don't think we've quite seen them come to form, and they will have to be at their very best if they're to win their next couple of games to get to an All-Ireland final. The difference could be huge between that goal going in. Like, quite aside from the Bob O'Keefe going back to Kilkenny, the big difference here is that Galway's path to the final is now incredibly difficult if they have to beat Tipperary and Limerick just to get to an All-Ireland final, compared to being on the other side with 4 weeks off.
There is plenty of hurling in Leinster, as Owen Cody says. Well, am I right in saying you're putting more of a weight on the Munster Championship, given there could be an argument to swap Tipperary and Galway in 4th and 5th? I guess you're waiting and see what happens in that expected quarter-final between Galway and Tip, but could there have been an argument to have Galway up in 4th?
Yeah, look, there is definitely an argument for it. I mean, I kind of understand where Jackie Tyrrell is coming from. He said earlier this week that he thinks Tipperary are probably the team to watch from here on out, as even, outsiders to lift the McCarthy, whatever, about getting into an All-Ireland semi-final when they take on Galway in a couple of weeks' time. So I think Tipperary did very, very little wrong in the Munster Championship. They were good throughout the league as well, and then the Waterford performance was the one that let them down. I look at the team that they've named this morning ahead of the Offaly game tomorrow. They're going strong. Jason Ford is back in the team. Big boost for them to have Gerard O'Connor back fit enough to be on the bench. They look like they've got that bit of depth about them in their panel, which maybe they didn't have a few weeks ago with the injuries that they'd picked up. And I believe there's a massive Tipperary support going to Tullamore tomorrow afternoon. A county board official told me on Wednesday evening that almost 7,000 tickets have been sold, the vast majority of them for Tipperary supporters. So it's going to feel like a Tipperary home game tomorrow. I think it's very difficult for the teams who lose the Joe McDonagh final to be motivated going into the All-Ireland preliminary quarter-final. It feels inevitable they will remove that from the championship in the coming years as well, that a team stays on to train for an additional 3 weeks after they've lost the biggest game of their season to be rolled out against a top county. And generally, we've only had one team defeated so far in the preliminary quarter-finals that came out of the All-Ireland series, and that's when Dublin lost against Laois in 2019. So Tipperary should be able to work the Waterford performance out of their system tomorrow afternoon in Tullamore, and then they can get ready to play against Galway. Venue TBC. Quite a few people have DM'd me to say, where do you think the quarterfinals are likely to be? And there's lots of speculation about Páirc Uí Chaoimh. If Tipperary involved, it won't be a double header at Thurles. Thurles would seem the obvious place to host them if Tipperary aren't involved, but I would expect that Tipperary will beat Offaly, and then you're looking at maybe quarterfinals in different venues, or potentially even both of them being at Páirc Uí Chaoimh.
Very finally, very briefly, the top two. I think there'll be a lot of Clare fans obviously very disappointed after the weekend. You were asked a question about the Leinster final earlier on, so I'll go with that. If they had a squeak through, would you have changed that order, or still believe that would have stood through?
Oh, it'd have to be tempting, wouldn't it? Because the All-Ireland champions have never been beaten twice in the year afterwards and then gone on to retain their crown. So it would have put Limerick into a sticky enough position if they'd lost against Clare at home.
Would you have changed
the championship? I think I would have been very tempted to, yeah.
Would you have changed it?
He will doesn't deal in hypotheticals, you see.
He would.
I like what you're dealing me towards here, where it's like, would you have changed it? Definitely.
Well, I'm getting a lot of political responses here. Will
let's barrack him
and push him here.
I think Clare probably would have went top of the power rankings actually if they'd won. Because if you go to the Gaelic grounds twice in the 1 year and beat the All-Ireland champions, the best team that we've seen over the last 5 seasons, you'd have to respect Clare doing that. And look, realistically, they probably should have won it. Quite aside from the free that they should have had, they should have had 2 frees in the closing stages of the game, which would have sent it to extra time. Clare would be left to bemoan the wides that they hit during the game as well. Clare had every chance of turning over Limerick again. The question now is, Limerick, who've been top of the power rankings throughout the entire year, will they kick on and maybe come up a couple of other gears as they go into a semi-final now after a break? Because Cian Lynch has got a bit of extra time for his hamstring to get right. We'll see if Garrod Hegarty hits a little bit more form. Aaron Gillane is now playing in incredible form, scored 111 at the weekend, which was crucial for Limerick. And I heard Kieran Carey say yesterday he reckons Limerick are operating at about 50%. It's scary if they could add an extra 50% onto what they're doing now, because the record in finals, Adrian, is disgustingly good. They've played 12 finals under John Kiley. They've won all 12 of them. So generally when Limerick get to the business end of a championship, they have what it takes to turn that into silverware. But Clare have got every reason to think that they are still major contenders in this championship. Obviously that's why they're sitting in second place. You would think that Clare will beat Dublin or Carlow in the quarterfinals, and then they'll play Kilkenny, which is an opportunity for a measure of revenge, because Clare will be so disappointed with the way they performed at Croke Park in that semi-final last year, and they would love, I would say, to reset a trilogy fight against Limerick in the All-Ireland final at the end of July.
Nice one, Will. Fair play. Thank you.
Cheers, lads. Talk to you soon.
Power rankings.
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
Alright, that's it from us for today. Enjoy the festival over the weekend, Shane.
Cheers, Adrian.
Yeah, get the update on Monday, no doubt. Tuesday?
Wednesday, you'll see me.
Wednesday, oh my word. This is going to be quite... So the festival goes on until Tuesday, does it?
No, it'll go on till Monday morning. But the thing is, I have a tent. Jojo, famously on our team here behind the scenes, is only bringing, wait for it, a hammock.
Right.
Just
where and to sleep in?
Literally just a hammock. Chatting to him. So best of luck to Jojo.
OTB AM, would you let Labs get the ultimate shave of your money back? Neon Night Edition is available now. Monday's show, the performance ranking, post-Greece reaction, Gibraltar build-up, Anthony Moyles in the GA, plenty more as well. Besides, going to leave you with Melinda Farrell on the Ashes. Have an amazing weekend.
Now, the Ashes get underway tomorrow, with Australia hoping to retain the urn and come into the series as the world's current top-ranked Test team. The Aussies have won 4 of the 5 matches in the series last year, which resulted in an overhaul of the English coaching team. Brendan McCullum appointed as their coach, and Ben Stokes replacing Joe Root as captain as well. Since then, England have had a bit of a revival. They've won 11 of their last 13 tests, including the win against Ireland earlier this month. So it's all set up very nicely for the opening test at Edgbaston tomorrow. Delighted to say that Melinda Farrell is with us now. Melinda, how are you getting on?
Oh, well, I'm exhausted. Do you know that the week leading into the first test of an Ashes series is always frantic, and it feels like this series itself, it's been hyped up so much. I confess I've not looked forward to an Ashes series ever as much as this one, and so this week it really is, but all the talking has now pretty much been done, and it's one more sleep. It's basically Ashes Eve, and I do feel like a little kid waiting to open up all the presents tomorrow morning.
Well, I did try and capture it in the intro, how exciting it is with the form that these two teams are in. So Australia, on the back of their win against India, have been incredibly consistent at test level, and England have had this revival in the last year when it was all doom and gloom after the Ashes series in 2022, and they've fired into form, and it seems that in Stokes they've got a really good captain as well. So in theory, even for those who aren't rooting for Australia on one side or England on the other, if you're a neutral fan looking to sit down over the next 4 or 5 weeks and watch this test series, this is beautifully set up.
Oh, it couldn't be set up any better, I think, mostly actually because of England and the way they lost that test series in Australia, as you mentioned, that 4-0. It was a miserable time for England. They were down and out. It was through COVID. Everything just went wrong for them, and it was a really miserable series. They just looked totally beaten down. And then since Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum took over, the revolution really, as it's called, Bazball, the nickname that's been given to it, which they don't really like, but you don't choose your own nicknames. That's how it works. It's been so incredible, and all the way along throughout this period, they've played this aggressive style, fearless style that has just been a joy to watch, and each step along the way, the question has been, but can they do this against South Africa? Or, but can they do this in Pakistan on flat pitches? Can they do it in New Zealand? And each time along the way, this wave that they're playing works. They make decisions, and Ben Stokes as captain makes decisions that just defy all conventional cricket wisdom. And it has worked so far. So now the question, of course, is can they do it against Australia? And this is a really good Australian team. I think their bowling attack is stronger than it was in 2019, that drawn series over here, that when Australia retained the urn on that occasion. So in some ways they look stronger, and you couldn't have actually set it up better. I'm just praying that the series itself is as exciting as we're all hoping it will be.
I've no doubt it will be. Now I look at the way that England's newcomers have been working out as well, and unfortunately Ireland were the testing ground for England just in the final, tuning up ahead of the Ashes, and England were very impressive over the last couple of weeks. And I look at players like Harry Brook, also Ben Duckett at the moment. You've got Ollie Pope, who got 205 against Ireland during that series as well. You look at Duckett's, very impressive. So his first 19 tests, he's hit over 800 runs. So some of these players who've come in to play under the new system are actually rewarding the coaching team for giving them a chance as well.
They are, and a big part of the philosophy of Stokes and McCullum is instilling confidence, backing the players, removing the fear of failure. That is a real key to it. And if you think about it, if any coach in the world could actually successfully bottle the formula of removing the fear of failure, well, they'd make a fortune. But even if you look at all of us in life, gosh, what would you do if you had no fear of failure? What would I do? There's so many things, and I think that's part of what's made it so exciting. But you mentioned a couple of those new players. It's going to be really interesting because Harry Brook and Ben Duckett, this is their first Ashes series. So it's Australia's first look up close and bowling to these guys. And it's their first opportunity to test themselves against what is an outstanding fast bowling attack in particular for Australia.
And I think as well you have to take the occasion into account. So if you're stepping out at Edgbaston this week or later in the series at Lord's or at Old Trafford, and it's an Ashes and it's a meeting of the two old enemies and the biggest rivalry in cricket, that brings a different pressure compared to playing in series in the middle of the year, realistically.
It certainly does. And sometimes you see a ball, I mean, we've seen sometimes a first ball can set the tone, if you like, for a whole series. So I would expect it could be very interesting right from the start. And there's so many different subplots and narratives sort of throughout this as well. When you look at the return of Moeen Ali 2 years after he last played a red ball game, and Ben Stokes sent out the SOS when their spinner Jack Leach was injured, and Mo's back. That doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. But again, it's a gut feel decision for Ben Stokes, and so you've got that narrative too. How will he perform back in this sort of arenas. And the sense of occasion really is, especially here at Edgbaston, the crowd here is notorious as far as being very loud, very vocal. Last time around, 4 years ago, they were brutal when it came to the likes of Steve Smith and Dave Warner in particular after the Sandpapergate scandal in South Africa. It was their first series back playing for Australia. So I expect there might be a bit of that hanging around as well. Last time it didn't bother Steve Smith at all. He had this protective bubble that was truly a fortress, and he just shut all of it out and didn't seem to hear a single word of it. So he's a good one. He's one who handles the pressure of the occasion very well, but it is a notch up, and those players who are able to thrive on it but also block it out when they need to are the ones who may fare best.
I would suggest if you're the type of veteran player who's willing to bring sandpaper into a series to try and rough up the ball, you're not going to be too concerned about a few boos coming during a match. You're probably going to, I would say, channel that in the most positive way possible, which is, here we are, the English fans don't particularly like us, let's go out and retain the urn again.
Well, Steve Smith did here in that first test make 2 scores in the 140s, so it really didn't bother him. He was the player of the match at the end of it, so definitely I don't think we'll be fazed by that. England say they've got, they're going to bowl differently to him this time. They've got their plans. They've certainly used some funky fields over the past year since this cricketing revolution. So it's going to be yet another fascinating narrative to just see what they do to Smith and how they try to discomfort him, unsettle him, get through that bubble that he creates so well.
You mentioned Moeen Ali coming back in because of Jack Leach being out, and I kind of looked through the squad here, and Root, maybe Dan Lawrence can spin a little bit, but I think it'd be fair to say that they're not dedicated spinners, or they're not maybe who you'd want as your first choice spin attack. So you can kind of understand why they would go back to Moeen Ali despite his time out of the Test team, because they're going to need something to try and balance their spin attack here.
They definitely will, and Joe Root certainly will. I'm assuming he'll probably bowl some overs at some point in time, and he's quite a useful part-timer, and sometimes has that knack of just getting wickets when you might not be expecting it. Moeen Ali, it was quite amazing. In this very room where I'm sitting at the moment, he gave his press conference a couple of days ago. I can't think of any other player in the world, any other bowler who would be so honest as to sit up there and say, well, I've never been holed up and able to hold up an end in my whole career. So he knows they're going to come for him, but he's not there to hold up an end. He's probably there really to take wickets and be more attacking. So then how England sort of cope with Australia going after them, it could backfire on Australia. It's happened in the past when players have gone for Mo and have paid the price, but it's just incredible for him coming back. And there has been some criticism that there are all these players in the county game who the spinners plying their trade who haven't been called up. There is someone like a Liam Dawson or a Dan Lawrence who've been in the squad and have been overlooked for the 11. But it is Ben Stokes' gut feel, and he obviously trusts Moeen as well, and feels that he could send that to him. It was amazing. Moeen Ali said himself, he hadn't heard the news about Jack Leach, and he got a text message from Ben Stokes that just said Ashes ? He thought he was joking, and he replied with an LOL. Honestly, I think if you could get a screenshot of that text exchange, it should hang in the Louvre as a great work of art, because that is absolutely brilliant.
I think if you're Moeen Ali, you might think that might have been a question saying, are you coming down to watch the Ashes, as opposed to, do you want to be part of the squad here last second before it gets underway? I mean, the other thing as well is you look at Australia's form coming into this, and it's really good. They've won 6 of their last 10 tests, haven't lost to England since September of 2019. That was that defeat at the Oval. And then they're just after beating India really comfortably in the World Test Championship final just last week. So their recent form is good, and their form even since the Ashes last year has been pretty strong as well.
very strong. They just had that tricky tour in India, which is always going to be very difficult going over there and playing those 4 tests. So that was obviously a bridge too far for Pat Cummins' side. Yeah, I think conditions do suit them a lot more than they do in India. There's a greater point of difference from Australia to India than there is from Australia here in England. So they do come in, and although the World Test Championship final was clearly a really important event in its own right, and it did decide who was going to be the world champions in Test cricket, it had this double duty as being a warm-up in a way for this series, and I think it was like the perfect warm-up really for Australia, because even though they won comfortably, it was 5 days of testing cricket. They had to spend a lot of time out in the middle. They were bowling to high-quality batters. They were facing high-quality bowlers. I mean, it's a far better lead-in than if they'd been playing a county side sort of somewhere in the outer margins of England cricket. So for them coming in, they say they're still fresh. They're all available for selection, although they haven't named a team as yet. They're going to wait until the toss. So it couldn't have been much better, I think, as a lead-in for Australia to have a proper test as a match to be played just before the Ashes starts.
You mentioned the captain, Pat Cummins, there. His record against England is very good with the ball. So 73 of his 220 Test wickets coming against England. 33 of those have come on English soil. His economy rate is less than 3 and over against England. Less than 3 a wicket, I should say, against England as well. This is a guy who seems to like playing against the English.
He absolutely does, and now that he's captain, he has said that this whole tour, they've been referring to this as a 6 test tour, and they've ticked off the first box of winning the World Test Championship. But he did say before that match that this tour would probably define his legacy as Australia's captain. Even with all the other series he's played, matches he's won, this is it. And captains do tend to get judged on things like World Cups, but very much so for Australia and England. They're judged on Ashes series. So they also feel that in 2019 they let things slip at the Oval. They could have won the series outright and been the first team in a long time. So this is still 21 years since I can't remember if it's 21 or 23. I can't believe that slipped my mind. But it's been more than 2 decades since an Australian team won over here in England, won the series outright. So they felt they just left something in the bag when they were here last time, and they are very determined to redress that on this occasion.
And when I look at some of the other players here, I'm sure Scott Boland has Irish blood somewhere in his ancestry with that name. But what a start to life for him. So he's played 111 innings so far. He's taken over 200 wickets, and he's had a 5-wicket haul in there as well, which is an incredible start to life in that Australian team.
Well, his first match was against England at the MCG 18 months ago in that miserable series for England, and that was a miserable day for them, and an incredible day for Scott Boland, who has plied his trade in the domestic circuits for many years. Gets into his 30s. He's probably feeling like with Cummins, Hazelwood and Stark, the big 3 of Australian fast bowling, that he was probably never going to get his opportunity, and he did. And taking 6 or 7 in that innings, it was just incredible. He had the whole MCG rocking on that day, and he has the ability to come in and bowl these wicket-taking spells or even wicket-taking overs where he takes more than 1 wicket in an innings. And we saw him do that in India, and his ability to do that just means he can change the flow of a game so quickly, and it can be a point in time that then, I guess, diverts a game and defines how the rest of that match will go. So I don't know if he's going to play in this first test yet. It's pretty much 2 out of the 3 of Stark, Hazelwood and Boland, along with Pat Cummins. It's probably that you'd say Pat Cummins wants to play every test, he has said, in this Ashes series. It's all being played within a space of 6.5 weeks. So that's really taxing for the quick bowlers. So it's every chance that maybe none of them will actually play all 5, and we will see a rotation. So I'm sure Scott Boland, if he doesn't get his opportunity at Edgbaston, will get it somewhere else. And he's averaging less than 15. It's just astonishing. Bit unhappy, I think he is, because he was averaging under 10 for quite a while. So he wouldn't mind getting it back down there. It's a great story, and Australians are very delighted for him.
We're almost certainly going to see a landmark unless something remarkable was to happen with Steve Smith. So he got a century against India in the first innings in that ICC World Test Series, and he's only 53 runs away now from going to 9,000 runs. So I think it will happen against England over the next few weeks, and he'll become just the 4th ever Australian to do so. He'll move up into the top 20 in the ranking of runs of all time as well. So I'm sure he's going to get a nice reception from the English fans whenever that inevitably happens over the next few days.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, hopefully that has kind of died down. Me personally, I'm not a fan of booing whatever the team is, whoever the player is. It's not my bag. So I don't enjoy that so much. I remember here when he scored a century, people were on their feet and they were clapping and booing at the same time, which was really, really weird. But it may have died down a little bit. I'm not sure, but it's hard to deny that since coming back, you're never sure when a player spends that amount of time as he did when he was banned out of the game. You're never quite sure if they're going to be the same player when they come back. And actually, that series is probably his best series, and that first Ashes test when he got those 2 big hundreds. I mean, he said that was probably his favourite match because of the circumstances and it being his first game back for Australia. So I think he's got good memories here, and I know he's hoping that he can have a similar impact on Australia's fortunes.
Yeah, Ben Stokes close to a big record as well. He's 6 wickets away from following in the footsteps of Ian Botham in this series too, because he'll have hit over 5,000 runs for his country in Test cricket and also taken 200 wickets, which is a very unique achievement to be that good on both sides of the ball. And there's 2 bowlers there who've got massive experience and have been a thorn for Australia over the years in Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad. One of the guys I think was saying in the office recently that Anderson is now closing in on records from the 1930s going into this, but the 2 guys there went past Glenn McGrath and the late great Shane Warne back in February as well, when they took over 1,000 wickets between them on combined teams. So that just goes to show how good both Anderson and Broad have been as a combo bowling for England together.
Yeah, they have. And actually, it was interesting to see them both included in this test because I wasn't necessarily sure if they would or if they would plump for Mark Wood, just because he's got extra pace. And that's a bit of a point of difference. Although Ollie Robinson, Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad are all slightly different, they are all right arm seamers. So obviously Jimmy is one of the best exponents of swing. Really, they all are. Stuart Broad is. You look at all of them. They have so many weapons in their armoury. But that has been one of the questions, whether it's something that England are lacking, someone to be that enforcer, to come in and shake things up, to put batters on the back foot. We saw Travis Head was in brilliant form against India, and the only time he was troubled was when they bowled short and fast to him and bounced him. Do England have the bowling attack to be able to do that? Does Ben Stokes do it himself? Or does he ask one of the others to try and bring in some bumpers and try and discomfort whenever they feel that is necessary? So it's going to be interesting to see how England cope with rotating their own fast bowlers as well. But at the same time, you can't quibble with Robinson, Anderson and Broad. That's also a pretty canny lineup with as you say, so many wickets between them. And Jimmy Anderson, I mean, he looks as fit as ever. I swear, he's cricket's Dorian Gray. There is a picture hanging somewhere in a basement of Jimmy Anderson, and it's all wrinkled with the teeth falling out and all the muscles withered away. There has to be, because he just looks as good as he ever has.
And I was going to ask you about Joe Root, because last year I actually thought he batted reasonably well in Australia, but he paid the price with the captaincy because of the way the series went in a more general sense. But I remember watching some interviews with him once he'd been taken over by Ben Stokes as captain, and Root was saying, look, this gives me an opportunity to focus on my own play. It's about how I'm going to bat from now on. And the last year his batting stats have been pretty good.
Yeah, watching Joe Root in Australia, I remember watching him in Sydney when he was sitting out in the middle of the pitch and he had headphones on and he was just listening to music, and he just looked so forlorn out there in the middle on his own. And I think the thing with Joe Root as a captain, he's actually quite a caring person and a caring captain. You see it in a lot of interactions with everybody, actually, with fans, with players, even with people in the media. And sometimes I guess the thing about caring so much is you can become careworn. And now I look at Joe Root and he's back to sort of the cheeky chappy that he was when Alistair Cook was captain in his younger playing days, and it's part of that whole thing I said earlier about removing the fear of failure and having people around you who believe in you, and as Ben Stokes said today, in making people realise that they're even better than perhaps what they think they are. So their ability to instill confidence has certainly worked, I think, with Joe Root, and it's just led to another phase of his career, and one which he looks like he's enjoying.
I hate to reduce it down to, at the end, a prediction, but especially when you've got a case of so many interesting, as you say, kind of side stories and strengths and weaknesses on both squads and both teams coming in good form. So I won't ask you to predict the entire series here, but for the first test, how do you think it's going to go at Edgbaston?
I think the coin toss is going to perhaps play an interesting role, and because if Australia win the toss and bat first, there might be a few down with a reasonable amount of runs on the board, and if England get in first, they might be all out on the first day, but they'll have put a mozza on the board and the game will be moving very fast. So I do think the toss might have a big impact on the rhythm of this game as we go. I don't know. It's impossible to predict. I genuinely don't know. That would be my prediction, that one of those two things will happen. There is some rain hanging around for day 4 and 5. I would not be surprised if this test finishes on day 3 or day 4. So whatever happens, I think it could happen quite quickly just because of the way England play. They lost big again in their first test against South Africa last year, and then in the remaining 2 tests they came back and won big in the next 2. So even though Ashes tests have a tendency to often be a little bit defined by whoever strikes the first blow, even if it doesn't go England's way in this first one, I wouldn't count them out from where they go. I know that's really fence city, but that's, there's some prediction in there.
I think so. And it's comfortable on the fence. That's what I've learned when people clip these things in these days, and it gets used against you when it plays out entirely differently to how we planned. Everyone will forget what the prediction was in 2 or 3 days' time anyway. So it all kicks off Edgbaston tomorrow. The series then goes to Lords, Headingley, Old Trafford, and then we'll finish in the Oval for what could well be a deciding 5th test this time around. Melinda, it's been a pleasure to have you with us, and hopefully the Ashes is as good as we've hyped it up to be.
My fingers are crossed, every single one of them, toes too. I'm sure it will be. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a million.